third mini summit, strengthening business cooperation between India and UK and India and the EU. A couple of points. Please be on mute. And when you have an opportunity, please unmute yourself and speak. Now ask our chairperson from Europe and for Business Industry to welcome our guests and the speakers.
Thank you, Arun. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, distinguished guests, members of parliament, panel speakers, and delegates. As Arun mentioned, my name is Sujit Nair. I'm the chairman of the Europe India Center for Business Industry. We are a multilateral think tank, and in association with various partner organizations, we have been playing a role in promoting closer trade and relations between India, EU, and UK over the past 10 years. As part of our initiatives, we have organized 24 major summits in Europe, 22 at the British Parliament in London, 2 summits at the European Parliament in Brussels, whereby EICBI and its delivery partners have engaged more than 3,240 delegates from 2,190 companies. These summits have provided an opportunity for British MPs, European MPs, and Indian lawmakers to not only get to know each other, but also engage in discussion with companies which are planning to expand into these regions. We've also organized numerous delegation visits to India, which have provided opportunities for MPs and companies to get a first-hand experience of Indian markets. We release an annual listing of top 40 under 40 leaders called Europe India 40, and this listing includes leaders below the age of 40 from UK-India corridor and EU-India corridor, and are doing great work in promoting EU-India relationship and UK-India relationship. As part of the initiatives to promote the work of the Europe India 40 leaders, we are currently carrying out a campaign called EuropeIndia40 VIEWS campaign. Hear from the leaders who will shape the future of UK-India, EU-India relations. As part of this campaign, we are organizing a series of mini summits which focus on various topics which Europe India 40 leaders are passionate about, so as to share their message and work to a wider audience. We had the first mini summit on 22nd January, and this focused on the impact of Brexit on UK-India and EU-India relations. In addition to the participation of 4 Europe India 40 leaders, we had current leaders from British Parliament and European Parliament and Indian Parliament who participated in this summit. These include Lord Moylan, member of the House of Lords, UK Parliament, Ms. Ursa Portnick, policy advisor for EU-India relations, European Parliament, Ms. Priyanka Chaturvedi, member of the Indian Parliament and a member of Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs, Mr. Achyuta Samantha, member of the Indian Parliament and the member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. The second mini summit was on 22nd February, and this focused on green economy and climate change cooperation between India and the European Union, India and the UK. And in addition to the participation of 4 Europe India 40 leaders, current leaders from British Parliament, European Parliament and Indian Parliament did participate in this summit. The leaders from the parliaments who participated include Dr. Kirit Solanki, the member of Parliament from India and the member of Standing Committee on Indian Parliament Standing Committee on Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ms. Wenjahan, member of the European Parliament from Germany, and Mr. Robert Whittemore, the member of the UK Parliament and member of UK Parliament's Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. Today's summit is the third of our Europe India 40 VIEWS campaign. We have 8 of our Europe India 40 leaders participating in the panel discussion. We have 4 members of Parliament from UK Parliament, EU Parliament, Indian Parliament who will be sharing their inputs during today's discussion. The members of Parliament who are participating in today's discussion include Mr. Soren Gade, MEP, member of European Parliament from Denmark, and also the chairman of the EU delegation for relationship with India. Sir Ian Duncan Smith, member of Parliament from UK and the ex-leader of the Conservative Party. We have Lord Rami Ranger, member of the House of Lords UK Parliament and patron of the Conservative Friends of India. Dr. K. Krishna Rao, the member of Parliament from India and the chairman of the Standing Committee on Industry. We also had another MP from India called Mr. Ritesh Pandey, who was supposed to participate in the discussion. He is also part of the Standing Committee on External Affairs. Unfortunately, he did test COVID positive, and therefore had to pull out of today's discussion, but he has assured of participating in our future discussions. The summit would have, so we had a number of partners who have helped us organize this summit over the past few months. I would like to thank our media partner, Diplomatist Magazine, and our human resource partner, Internship, for helping us organize these summits. We are recording this discussion for future reference, and we'll also be sharing this live on our Facebook page. Without much ado, I'll request Arun to kick off the discussion, as we are all looking forward to hear the views from experts on strengthening business cooperation between India and UK and in India and the EU. Over to Arun.
Thanks a lot, Suchet. Thanks for the welcome. I will now request Councillor Aryan to take the stage and introduce our distinguished speakers. Councillor Aryan, over to you, please. Councillor Aryan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arun. Hello all. Firstly, welcome everyone, all the delegates, the panel members, the chairman, the vice chairman, the MPs and MEPs. Firstly, as you know, we all share the frustration and sympathy for the recent Indian corona pandemic. So I request everyone to remain 20-second silence in the memory of all the victims that's been lost during the pandemic. Can we have 20-second silence, please? Thank you, everyone. Firstly, I would like to give an introduction about Member of European Parliament, Suren Gade. Thank you, sir, for coming forward and joining us today. Mr. Suren Gade is a Danish politician and served as a defense minister in Denmark from 2004 to 2010. Mr. Gade was elected to the European Parliament in 2019. Since then, he's been serving as the chair of the Delegation for Relations with India and vice chair of the Committees of Fisheries and member of Committee on Transport and Tourism. In 2020, he joined the Special Committee on Beating Cancer. Not only that, Mr. Gade is also the chairman of Europe-India Business Council, a non-profit think tank based in Brussels, and under the royal decree of Majesty of the King of the Belgians. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We look forward to hearing your speech and your valuable message for all our panel members across Europe and India and all the Member of Parliament. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues and dear friends, first of all, I would like to say thank you for this invitation and the opportunity to attend and speak here at this virtual mini summit arranged by Europe-India Center for Business and Industry. It's an honor for me to be here with you today. And I've been looking forward to meeting you today to discuss the theme on this summit on how we can strengthen the business relationship between the European Union and India. When I took the task of becoming the chairman of the European Parliament's delegation to India, I had a few primary objectives and ideas on how the European Union and India can develop a closer bond and have more business cooperation in the future. Let me just mention 3 points that, in my point of view, are important for creating a better cooperation, better relationship between India and the European Union, and also will benefit companies around the world who wishes to enter and expand into the Indian market. Firstly, I believe that we need to unleash the potential there is for more trade between India and the European Union. The EU is India's largest trading partner, but India is only EU's 10th largest trading partner. Herein lies a huge potential, and I think it is a shame that the European Union does not trade more with India. The country and its markets is huge, and its potential is just waiting to be explored by our companies. Furthermore, India is a reliable trading partner, conducting rule-based trading. Lastly, and most important, when we in the European Union take our businesses to third countries, we must favor democracies. This is why I regret that there has been a much bigger focus on trading with China than there has been on trading with India. Also, global trade has, as no other instrument, led to an increase in living standard for all in the past decades, and will still be one of the main drivers of much needed growth for all of us. More trade between India and the European Union will therefore not only benefit our relation and give our companies a greater opportunity to enter the Indian market. No, more trade will also give us the unique opportunity to make sure that our global trade helps sustainable development, that protecting the environment no longer stands in contradiction with growth and trade, and that appropriate working conditions are provided for everyone. On this journey, we must support European SMEs to play an important role in those new trading relations, as larger companies have more stamina doing so. Secondly, I think it is important that we gain a stronger European focus on India as a democratic strategic partner. India shares many values with the European Union. India believes in a rule-based trading system, in democracy, rules of law and human rights. India is, as I see it, a natural partner for the European Union, and we should support each other in promoting these values domestically and abroad. Therefore, I hope that the outcome of the summit meeting in May in Portugal between the European Union and India will be that leaders from Europe and India send a clear signal in support of the multilateral system, in support of free trade and fair global trade, and in support of democracy and human rights. Democracy and human rights are part of the solution. This is just not a statement you will expect me to say as a politician. We know we have embarked on a systemic competition with nations that have very different views on human rights, and therefore cooperation among liberal democracies as the European Union and India will become a very real necessity. The European Union and India, we have recognized this. Thirdly and lastly, climate change is a global cross-border problem that requires common international solutions. And here lays a golden opportunity to promote a partnership with India in the green transition. When it comes to the green transition, India naturally has a huge impact on global emissions. India produces many of the goods that the rest of the world relies on, and the sheer size of the Indian population means that we need to work closely with India to achieve a climate neutral economy. Therefore, partnership between the European Union and India in this field is very important. Only if we come together to develop the tools needed for the green transition, it can happen whilst also boosting the economy, rather than making people jobless. And it is possible to combine more trade along with encouraging India to see the opportunities in cooperating with companies working to promote and sell green and climate neutral solutions. Take, for example, the Danish wind turbine company Vestas. Since 2006, Vestas has been present in India, in the Indian market, and it has played a key role for the development of wind energy in the region. Earlier they were able to see the great opportunities India can offer manufacturing companies, and that it has been fruitful for the companies, which over years has increased their investment in the Indian market. This means that today they have expanded their production in the country with multiple factories and have, I think it is more than 3,000 employees right now in India. And most recently, Vestas has launched a new turbine variant that suits the Indian climate with low wind speed. And at the same time, they announced an establishment of a new factory and an expansion of an existing factory. And this will give, I think it is more than 1,000 new jobs created in India as a result of the new initiatives from Vestas and their increased production. Several of the European green manufacturing companies should, in my opinion, be inspired by Vestas' business adventure in India, because I think that the example perfectly illustrates how we can strengthen both trade cooperation and promote the green transition in India at the same time. There is no doubt that both the European Union and India will benefit greatly from a stronger cooperation with each other. I believe that the European Union recognizes these opportunities, and I can assure you that in my role as chairman of the European Parliament's delegation to India, I am working to fulfill them every day. Therefore, I look forward very much to the discussion here today and receiving input today on how India and the European Union can develop stronger partnership of the benefit to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gadia. Thank you very much for your speech and your insights and your role as a chairman for Indian delegation. We now move on to the next member of parliament from UK, Dr. Lord Rami Ranger. Ranger, sir, are you here? Yeah, I can see it. Thank you very much.
I'm here.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. So just to give a little bit background about Lord Ranger, I know there's a lot to say about Lord Ranger, but I'm just giving you a glance on his profile. Otherwise, it would take a long time discussing about his career and his profile. Lord Ranger is a community champion, a social champion, and an inspirational figure for many of the British Indians. Lord Ranger was nominated for a life peerage and a seat in the House of Lords in former Prime Minister Theresa May's resignation honours. He was created as Baron Ranger of Mayfair in the city of Westminster, London. He's a philanthropist and donated over £1 million to various universities for setting up entrepreneurial excellence centre and libraries across UK. He was the former chairman and the current patron of the Conservative Friends of India, which is an official wing of the Conservative Party, working with the Indian diaspora, the British, the Indian government, and the British government. He also is a member of Gandhi Memorial Foundation and donated a lot to the foundation. So overall, this donation would match up to $1 million. Rami Ranger was the co-founder of British Asian Conservative Link and Hindu Forum Britain. He received the Commander of Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in the year 2016 in the New Year's Queen's New Year's Honours List. In terms of his business excellency, he is the founder of Sunmark Limited, which won 5 consecutive Queen's Award for the enterprise of international trade. He had worked with former Prime Minister David Cameron and former Prime Minister Theresa May on many important India-UK events, and currently works with ministers of India and the Secretary of States of the UK and many trade organizations to improve the relations between India and the UK and also improve international trade relations between India and the UK. Dear Lord Ranger, thank you very much for joining us, and your length and breadth of experience will help our relations between UK and India, and I'm sure your experience will help our panel members and audience to know more about and how we can all step in to work for a better India-UK relations. All to you, Lord Ranger.
Thank you very much, Adrian Arati, for your very warm and kind introduction. I'm indeed grateful to Mr. Sujit Nair, Chairman, Europe India Center for Business and Industry, for inviting me to share my thought with you this morning. But before I do, I would like to send my condolences to all those people who lost their battle against Corona in India, and my good wishes and prayers to those who are fighting for their lives due to this unfortunate pandemic. That just shows that we have to be self-sufficient in order to look after our citizens. We just cannot depend on other countries for everything. Certain things we have to be self-sufficient, and I think lessons will be learned. India will emerge as a very strong nation because we always rise from the crisis stronger. So I'm very optimistic. The future will be much more brighter than the present one. The UK, India, and Euro friendship is made in heaven. Our friendship grows when we share each other's values. No two friends can become friends if their interests are totally the opposite. You know, one want to study, one want to play. So we have to have common interest and common values for us to build our lasting relationship. Europe, Britain, and India are liberal democracies, secular and countries where equality for all is enshrined in their constitution. Human freedom is at the heart of their governance. No one is oppressed or suppressed in Europe like we see in many countries like China, North Korea, and so on. So therefore, our relationship is a natural relationship. Unlike China, India does not work to undermine British or European interest in the world. In fact, we complement each other in our endeavors to make the world a better place for everyone. So we are a positive force and we have no conflict with anyone. As you know, India is a very stable democracy. In business with India will flourish as people who have already gone from Europe. There are huge industries from Europe, car industries, Japanese car industries, Korean industries, and other countries who have invested in India, put their faith in India, are not looking back. In fact, the business is going from strength to strength. You will not see a coup like the one we just see in Myanmar, in former Burma, by military. India has been a stable democracy right from the day of its independence. We are no stranger to one another. During both the great wars, the Indian soldier came and fought with the British forces for the European freedom and that of the world freedom. So that just shows that our historic relationship goes back to the day when Europe was in crisis and we came to help the cause of human freedom. And what we are enjoying today, the sacrifices of Indian soldier is underpinning that freedom what in Europe and Britain are enjoying today. Indian also came to rebuild Britain and Europe. As you can see, they worked in factories, they worked in hospital, they worked in transport, schools, and everything. The contribution of India and Indian is not just of today, it is centuries old. So therefore, we need to build on that relationship, which has stood the test of time again and again and again. Unfortunately, trade within Europe is not growing as rapidly as it is growing in India. So therefore, it is important that the European companies link up with the Indian company to grow their businesses and to get out of this sluggish growth. India, given the size, is a very big economy. It's probably number 4 economy in the world now. Having a trade relationship with India will be equivalent to having trade relationship with at least 10 big countries. India provides a local market and also opportunity to produce products at a fraction of cost. So therefore, we can become competitive in the world and we can compete with China. As you know, China has totally the opposite interest in the world. They suppress people, they oppress people. We have seen what they've done to the Uyghur Muslim. 1 million of them are in concentration camp just for for believing in a faith. So therefore, it is very, very important that we now learn from the past to make our future. We just cannot strengthen a country which is going to undermine our emphasis on human freedom, liberties, and equality and justice. So therefore, you have no choice but to develop relationship with those countries who share our values. I give you one example. JCB, a British company which moves earth-moving equipment, has moved their production to India. And now they're producing their equipment much cheaper than they would have done in Britain. And as a result, from India, they're exporting to 90 countries. So that is the result of collaboration with India. And there's another thing. India itself has a very large market. So you have a win-win situation. You can take advantage of the Indian market and also export competitively priced product to other developing countries which cannot afford expensive European product. India offers a scale of production to the European countries. We have seen with the pharmaceutical industry how European companies are manufacturing in India at the scale which the world needs and demands. So therefore, COVID vaccination is an example how India has been exporting AstraZeneca to nearly 90 odd countries to save world population. And you know, because Indians are product of a secular and democratic country, they are taught to use merit, not use race or religion to surge ahead. The result is every blue chip company is run by Indians. And they have proved themselves time and time again that they are better, if not equal, or equal, if not better, than the European or the Americans or the British people. So therefore, we should take advantage of the talent India has offered. India has already exported doctors, engineers, teachers, professors, you name it. So therefore, we are no stranger to one another. We have got same values and we will work hand in hand wherever we go. India now has a very large middle class due to the globalization and the wages and income. There is a very big market for European consumer products. Indian aspire to be like British or the European because they aspire to be with the first world countries, citizen of first world countries. So there is a huge demand for European product, from technology to clothes to drinks, foods, fashion, you name it. There is a demand for medical equipment, you know, anything, cars, motorcycles, scooters. There's a huge 1.4 billion people, and middle class is bigger than that of Europe and America put together. So there you can imagine the scale or the strength of Indian market. It is very important that people, European and the British, should understand that India no longer wants to import. They want to manufacture in India. So therefore, they should look to building strategic relationship with the Indian companies, because you also need a local commander, local knowledge to grow your business in any country. You know, I started my company with just £2 in a shed some 25, 30 years ago. And today my business is in 130 countries, and the only company to win an unprecedented 5 consecutive Queen's Award for enterprise in international trade by competing with the best in Britain. That just shows the strength of having strategic partners, because you can learn a great deal about a market. And also you can keep yourself very lean. You know, you don't have to spend money going to invest in India when you can find a strategic partner to build your relationship there and then. And all I can say in the end, that we must now look at India, having seen what China has done, how China is undermining in South China Sea, the interest of Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, and to some extent India also. It's time that we contain the dragon for our own future generation, for the sake of our future generations. So therefore, Europe, UK, India partnership is made in heaven. It is made for one another. We should capitalize it for the benefit of humanity as a whole. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ramiji, for such a great speech. And thank you for joining us. Your length and breadth of experience would obviously help relations between UK and India prosper. And I'm sure our panel members and delegates will learn so much from your speech. May I request Mr. Suren Gade and Dr. Lord Rami Ranger to stay on, because we might have some questions from the delegates. So we only have 2 more MPs to go through. We should finish in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Sadly, the next speaker would be Sir Ian Duncan Smith, but unfortunately, due to a very important commitment, he couldn't make it. But at the 11th hour, he just managed to send a video message, which I'll be playing now. Before I do that, I'm just giving a brief introduction about Sir Ian. Sir Ian is a member of parliament for Chingford and Woodford Green, and was the former elected leader of the Conservative Party, and also served as a Secretary of State for Works and Pension from the year 2010 to 2016. Sir Ian also founded Center for Social Justice in 2003, an independent think tank committed to tackle poverty and social breakdown. A patron of Conservative Friends of India, a very close friend of Lord Rami Ranger. And here is his video message. Arun, could you tell me if it's audible? Yeah, I'm just going to play that now.
Sure, Councillor Aryan.
Yes, 1 second. I'm just trying to share the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, can you all see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, I'm just playing it now.
Hello, I'm very pleased to be able to speak to the Europe-India Centre for Business and Industry, and of course, at the behest of Rami Ranger, whose involvement and heading up of the Conservative Friends of India, and of course, of which I'm a proud patron. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about this, because there are huge developments now possible for us now that we have left the European Union. And of course, number one on my agenda in terms of trade deals, and I've said this many times to the present Trade Secretary, is that we should do everything we can to have a significant trade deal with India. After all, you know, we have such a phenomenal history, a proud history as a nation, with our links with India over the past as friends, and our lives are very linked, and therefore will be a fantastic opportunity for us to develop those, having left the European Union, where we were much more restricted and couldn't do our own trade deals. The second point, of course, personally, for myself, my family's been involved in India for a couple of 100 years, and in a way, I'm the first generation not to be born there. But, you know, there are many of the coffee planters and tea planters, and huge involvement with Indian civil service and Indian army. So I'm very proud of my links with India, and I believe now that we need to help support India, develop India, and we're going in the right direction, and for us to do that by ourselves benefiting, but also India benefiting by this phenomenal and potential trade deal. And the point about this really is, at the moment, we face a significant problem globally, which is developing, and one which I think poses a real challenge to those members of the free world, in which I face, of course, the UK and India. We need to re-establish not just trade relationships, but the old relationships around things like defense and foreign affairs that will be necessary. India has a huge future role to play in this as one of the leading members.
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. Just gonna play that.
Of those Asian countries.
Thank you. Thanks.
In a way, have to counterbalance China in many respects, industrially, commercially.
You got my card, yeah?
As well as the deep relationship ties with the rest of the world that will enable us to work together to ensure that we don't feel those threats from China, and China is not able to develop in a threatening manner to the freedoms that we want to take for granted. So to my mind, India now has a developing and more important and vital role to play in global diplomacy and global policy. And I would be overkeen if we were able, as an old friend and a country with deep roots with India, together to forge that partnership for global reconstruction post-COVID. Therefore, right now,
Thank you so much.
Government and my own.
Thank you. That's really kind. Thank you so much.
See you next time, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pranav, could you go on mute, please?
Sorry.
So, right, Aaron, is that everything fine now?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. And one gentle request, please unmute, and we will request each one of you by name to unmute yourself, except for the speakers. Over to you, Constable.
Thank you, Aaron. Finally, we have the last MP from India, Mr. K. Keshav. So I can see you. Could you wave everyone? Okay, so let me give a brief introduction about Dr. K. Keshav, popularly known as KK, is a politician from Telangana and is a member of parliament representing Rajya Sabha. He's one of the long-standing politicians in the state of Andhra Pradesh before and was a cabinet minister in the state with portfolios like education, industry, and labor. Mr. Rao was former deputy chairman of the Legislative Council of the state. He's currently the chairman of the Standing Committee of Industries. Dear sir, thank you very much for joining us, and we would like to hear your experience and your opinions about India, Europe, and UK relations. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Aryan. Look, I was told by my friend Chandrasekhar, part of your organization, yesterday, last night, that I should be present some kind of a presentation on trade. And he mistook that by being the industry, he support commerce. And although we do deal with industries, heavy industries, automobile, with which I am concerned. But whatever it is, you are not yourself sure as to what exactly the subject that you wanted me to share, or what exactly you are all discussing. That is all new to me. But nonetheless, I thought it would be a pleasure joining friends from various countries and various forums. I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to MSU. And as I said already, I thank Chandrasekhar and also now Mr. Aryan to you and Mr. Nair and all other organizers. You see, the timing is so interesting that we meet on this Europe and India, including UK trade, at a time we are going for a G summit within a week. That would be in Porto in Portugal on May 8th. But the question today is, you want us to talk about Indonesia. Before I really talk about it, I share the sentiments of Lord Raminder on the COVID tragedy and the lives lost. And I also share with him the views that about the prospects of India to this UK and also European countries, because European countries we divide into two, the western part of it and the other part. We focus too much on western part as far as trade is concerned, and we look to the other side, other countries, not powerful enough as a second circle countries. So whatever it is, we are passing through a most worst kind of a crisis, that is COVID, which has taken a big toll. And I think most of you are also share the sentiments of Mr. Raminda, and we also pay our homage to people who have lost their lives. Now, question is about the subject that you have taken up. The trade relations between India and EU, European Union, including UK, though UK is no more part of EU, have evolved into a multifaceted partnership covering a myriad dimensions of political, economic, security, etc., call you the name that you will have it. In fact, the EU is one of our largest trading partners, one of the largest investors in India, and an important source for technology, innovation, and best practices. However, India's relations with Europe largely tend, as I said now, tend to focus on the old continent's western side, and for good reasons. France has emerged as a significant supplier of military equipment. Germany is India's biggest partner within EU, and UK is hub for Indian companies. And yet there is scope for New Delhi's relations with other less powerful European states. I say less powerful in the sense they are not focused as they should have been. And yet there is scope for New Delhi's relations with these less powerful European states, even though their capabilities are limited. I feel that these countries need to work out less strategic strategies and concentrate more on economic ties, preferably direct. Today, these second circle countries, I'm using the quote, engage with India via EU format. But I feel they should look forward towards bilateral relations. A recent study by Swedish Institute of International Affairs offers certain insights and advice in this regard, which includes the advantages of bilateral deals. In fact, India prefers bilateral engagement. There is certainly untapped potential at this level, some of which require immediate political action. For example, these less powerful countries can concentrate on the Indian businesses that are looking to leave UK or Brexit, which Raminda has just now tried to mention. Having said this, I feel that these countries of second circle, less powerful, must work out more coherent Asia-Pacific strategies that will focus on leveraging economic opportunities as well as mitigating direct challenges coming from the region, such as cybersecurity threats, terrorism, economic overdependence, and so on and so forth. It is good augury that India and EU have already agreed to review the progress of bilateral trade and investment agreements on a monthly basis by officials and followed by quarterly review by ministers. This will give us the continuum. The European Union leaders met with Indian officials virtually last February, holding a high-level dialogue for the first time. The meeting agreed for further deepening of bilateral trade and investment relations through a series of regular engagements, aiming at quick deliverable for the business in these tough times. This provides opportunity to resume formal negotiations between the two parties for a trade and investment agreement which I mentioned at the coming summit of May 8, with both sides aiming to expedite a deal to aid economic growth in the post-pandemic era. Our finance minister tweeted last week that May 8 meeting in Porto, Portugal would be a notable success for the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the EU. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to attend the leaders' summit. As regards the UK, you are all aware, and I did not stress much, that India has historic relation with her and is the second largest foreign investor in the UK. While UK ranks 18th as a trading partner of India, third after Mauritius and Singapore as investors in India. There are many bilateral trade agreements between the two nations designed to strengthen these ties, which I may not repeat, which you are all aware. In fact, both the countries, UK and India, had recently agreed to put in place the enhanced trade partnership, long awaited them, to foster free trade and market access. Its Foreign Secretary Liz Truss was here recently and held fruitful discussions with India's Commerce Minister. In their joint statement, they laid the groundwork for the ETP. They also reviewed progress in removing market access barriers on both sides, which have been troubling us for long. As said earlier, the EU, including the UK, was India's largest export destination as a bloc in the financial year 20, with 17% share in country's overall exports. So these dialogues come at an appropriate time when India's planned free trade agreement, FTA, with the EU has been losing some sheen thanks to Brexit. The UK accounted for 16% of India's 53.7 billion exports to the EU in financial year 20. Hence, trade deals with both EU and UK are crucial as far all these countries are concerned. Thus, the renewed thrust on trade talks after the COVID disruptions reinforces India's commitment towards greater integration with a global value chain, just as it maintains that its Atmanirbhar initiative is not inward-looking. For UK, a prospective trade deal with India would be an opportunity to foster a post-Brexit and post-COVID economic recovery by enabling British commerce with broader and greater access to India's fast-expanding consumer market of 1.3 billion and its significantly growing middle class. At a time when the prospects for global growth after the pandemic still remain uncertain. The 14th UK Britain's business opportunities in India will improve as India continues to liberalize its foreign direct investment policy, which is on the cards. At the risk of repetition, I say India is one of the largest direct investors in UK, holding second place behind the US and accounting for over 500,000 jobs in the UK. Behind heavy industry sectors such as automotive and steel, Indian investors, with which I am concerned, Indian investors have been long-term players in a range of other industries, including IT services, logistics, facilities management, and business contracts, etc. I will do my best to see that they are further strengthened. When the UK's Foreign Minister, Dominic Raab, paid a visit to India in 2020, he proposed a 10-year partnership in the form of a comprehensive strategic partnership, building on the earlier strategic partnership of 2004. However, the new proposed ties cover a broader range of collaborative measures, including closer military cooperation across the Indo-Pacific region amid other areas of co-development, such as tackling climate changes and countering international terrorism. I would rather end by saying that for UK, strengthening relations with India promotes the government's global Britain strategy of building more expansive relations in the Asia-Pacific region, including its recent application to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, that is CTPP, free trade bloc and FTA deals with Singapore and Vietnam. India and the UK have certain pressing trade issues which we hope will be resolved through the enhanced trade partnership very soon. Needless to say, India, as world's 5th largest economy, offers great potential to UK exports, which Mr. Ravinder stressed. On the whole, India and UK have strong ties through people, ideas, institutions, language, and technology, and share common values. These common links helped establish a successful partnership between these two countries of all sizes and all sectors, including European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keshav Ravji, for your insight. And I'm sure your delegation to Portugal would help prosper India, UK, and India-EU relations. Now we have questions from Priyanka Mahanti. Priyanka, over to you.
Thank you, Arian. Thanks for this very informative session. And I would like to thank all the speakers as well. I had a very basic question, and I think one of the speakers, either the member of parliament from Europe or member of parliament from the UK, Lord Rami Ranger, could answer this for me. Is like the European Investment Fund and the British Business Bank, which invests into many SMEs, startups from the UK and Europe, and kind of promotes that. In the future, are there any plans that they would provide platforms for Indian companies for investment opportunities into Indian companies and provide them like an equal platform so that they can kind of project their business onto the world? Thank you.
Is it my turn, Arian?
Oh, you can go, sir. Yeah, anyone.
Okay. Priyanka, thank you very much for this very important question. I have been advocating that we need people like you to set up an organization and then get at least 100 or 150 Indian industrialists to set up a fund to support entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs, from the IIT, from the engineering college or whatever, medical college or wherever, these would-be entrepreneurs who need the funding. So this funding will be given to them, having a stake in their company. So some 10%, 15%, you keep the stake, that the profit or money you make can then go to helping other such people. So we need to start from India, because we have got very, very successful industrialists, and for them giving 1 crore rupee will be peanut. So if you got 200 companies giving 1 crore each, so that you got a fund to start with 200 crore, and then the banks can also lend some money to you, but it has to be a very organized, professionally done, where people interview all these plans and people who have got some ideas, and someone has to vet them that they are practical or not. And the other thing I would like to say, the businessmen always look for business opportunity, profit. They are not philanthropists. In fact, they have to run their businesses successfully in order to keep the employment secure of their staff and the shareholders happy and all these things. So therefore, I will appeal to the Indian company, like I started, that I went to exhibit. There's a proverb, hidden talent is no talent. If you have a talent, if you can sing, then you must sing. If you can paint, you must paint, and you must tell the word. So similarly, if you aspire to grow, you want to make an impact, then you have to tell the world what product, what services you have, and what benefit you can bring to the table. So therefore, the emphasis for collaboration and cooperation is very, very important, because as you know, you're judged by the company you keep. And if I become connected with a German company or French company or European company, my thinking, for example, we Indians, we came to America, we came to England, how we adapted, how we changed. So you become according to the company you keep. So if I'm connected with a very advanced company, I will learn their skills and they will learn my skills. So exchange of information and knowledge benefit one another. So I think, you need to float this idea with the government, have the government backing as well, that they should have these funds to help, because helping Indian citizens, in fact, help India, because India cannot progress. The biggest wealth India has is her people. Yes, so therefore we have to empower our people, our Indian people, and we have to make it easy for them to succeed. And when they succeed, India succeed with them. So I hope I've given you some information useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Rami Ranger. Maybe we can be in touch about this later on. I'm based out of London as well, so it'll be really good to talk about this.
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Surangara, your thoughts on it, on the question?
Yes, thank you. It's a tough question. I can't give a complete answer on this. Of course, financing cooperation is always on the agenda. I'm sure that also in the when it comes to the summit and what's going on right now between the European Union and India, and hopefully we will have better ties with each other. And of course, this will be on the agenda. And the input given today, I mean, should be used in this discussion, because at the end of the day, access to money for companies will always, of course, one way or another, speed up things. And you have, like in Europe, you have national programs for companies investing in, you know, the different countries in the union. We have programs in my country, and then you might also argue that we should look into it in the European Union. So I will, you know, I will go back and I will look into what is the possibilities today, and also discuss in the council, you know, what could be done to make sure that it's not only words, but we actually, if there's a need, we have a facility to put in front of companies, so that the things we as politicians say will be backed up by, you know, some actions. So that's, I think that's the best answer I can give. But as I said in my speech, and I really do believe in it, we have to do something to strengthen our ties. It is, for me, strange that we do everything we can in the European Union to strengthen the tie with China. I mean, that is not a democracy. We don't share the same values. There's a lot of problems in China. We should instead, as I see it, use more political capital and more money on promoting relationship with the world's biggest democracy, and that is India. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Soren Gade. That was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Soren Gade and Lord Rami Ranger, I have a question. This is regarding the FTA, the free trade agreement, which India has to sign with EU, India has to sign with UK. First, Mr. Soren, I mean, what's your thought? How long? I mean, it's been almost 14, 15 years now since India started, India and EU did start this discussion about the FTA, but yeah, it's been stuck for quite a few years. Do you see it happening anytime soon? Any thoughts on it?
I didn't get the first part, but I'm just, you know, now we have, I mean, we have another plan for future cooperation between the European Union and India. And I mean, this is not a, you know, a perfect plan. This is not, you know, something will be changed, and we can also do it maybe better in the years to come. But I think it's very important that we have this roadmap that has been decided. And I see those summits between your Prime Minister and the European leaders are so important, because you can do all the agreements, but everything is made by people. And I think that those meetings we have right now, on high-level meetings, you get some trust in each other. And I think that is so important. Me being a member of the European Parliament, I mean, I'm really looking forward to strengthen the ties with the Parliament in India, so that, you know, we have trust in each other. And of course, I know that it will be a bumpy road. I mean, of course, you also have in India, you have to protect, you know, what you consider as very important sectors for the Indian society. I fully understand that. I mean, I don't have this idea that you go from 0 to 200 kilometers in 1 second. I mean, this will develop over times, and we will find those sectors where it makes sense, both for the European Union and for India, to to maybe look into taxes, or maybe, you know, doing more closer relationship. I mean, and the strategy we are seeing, especially now in India, but also all over the world on the COVID-19, I mean, that is also a place to start to make sure that, as was said in a speech, that, you know, we have to be able to protect our own citizens. We have to look into the pandemic in the future. How can we do better next time we'll be hit by something, COVID, whatever, new COVID. So there's so many things we can bust right now, and I see the roadmap as just a start. And of course, if we could have an agreement, you know, and I can also fully understand that India wants to go similar UK and EU. I mean, you look upon UK have been part of the European Union, now it's not, but of course you have to look into trade with both UK and the European Union. I fully understand that, and hopefully, you know, within the next year we will have a kind of agreement, and then I think, you know, then when you do it on a political level, a lot of companies, a lot of CEOs, they might say, okay, they're not only talking about it, now they're actually doing something, and then I think out of that agreement would come, you know, that would grow much more business that we have seen maybe in the last years. And a lot of companies, of course, they have a lot of their backbone facilities there already in India. But I think, you know, if we can facilitate something on the political level, then it will, you know, it will come to the companies. And I think that will unleash some of the potential I talked about in my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Uday,
Lord Ranger, do you have anything to say, Lord Ranger?
Lord Ranger, regarding the UK-India FTA, I mean, there's a lot of discussion happening, so this race. So any thoughts on it, sir?
UK-India free trade will happen. Unfortunately, the COVID has delayed everything. It is having a free trade agreement with India is not a choice, it's a necessity, because Britain now has to build strategic alliances with big economies, big countries, because, you know, you just can't look locally. You have to look globally now in this globalized world. You just can't be doing enough business around the corner. So you have to look, and India offers a huge potential. As I said, India needs everything. India is the largest buyer of defense equipment due to the hostile neighbors. So therefore, British defense industry is shrinking. You can see where it's going. If they do not link up with Indian companies, I'm sorry, there will be very little left in the world-class defense industry of the United Kingdom. So therefore, having strategic alliance with people is very, very important, because you, by joining hand with other people, you double your strength, and you also gain a lot of experience and big market. So therefore, that's number one. And the other thing, you know, I will say, an idea is a very small thing. Is you start, for example, Microsoft is example, Google is example, Amazon. These was just a small idea. Look where they are today. And we have got so much brain power in India. We're supplying to the world. And all we need is a good leadership, which Modi ji is providing. We also need somebody like young people with, you know, with energy, because unfortunately, you know, energy level declines when you grow old. I'm now over 70, so my energy level is not what it used to be when I was 30. I was trailblazer. I won every award in Britain. Yes, honor from Queen 8 times, not once, 8 times, because I was trailblazer. So, you know, I look to India for youth, people like you, who will make a list of products we import from China. They are not very high-tech industrial products. They just declare candles and toys and this and that. And then using CII or FICCI and all that, going to their members, asking them to make in India. Why would you export your job to China and create an adversary for yourself? Well, already it's an adversary to make it even more stronger. So little idea that we're going to identify the product. They can be easily made. Believe you me, we can make, if we can land on moon, yeah, or Mars or whatever, yeah, we can make toys, we can make candles, we can make little knickknacks what we import from China. So crackers or whatever. So therefore, I need youth of India to rise. The government is as good as the citizen. They have to be asking questions. They have to keep an eye on them. You have a social media. You have become very, very powerful. You can name and shame your elected members of parliament on Twitter, on Facebook, on anything. So democracy is only strong when people become strong. Yes. So we got to make sure we have got good leader. We got everything, but we can make them even more proactive. And by people like you, just giving the nudge here and there. So that's my take.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you both. We're running out of time because the core theme of this panel discussion is our delegation speakers. So one final question from Mr. Ashutosh Chauhan. Could you be very specific and clear, please, so that we wrap this up in 5 minutes? You're on mute, Ashutosh, you're on mute.
So now I'm audible to all of you.
Could you speak up a little bit, please? Your volume is low.
Sure. So I really welcome all the dignitaries here. My specific question would be, as I'm representing ShaperNet, India's Global Connect as a director, we are closely working with ministries and various government departments and also government PSUs in India for majorly for infrastructure projects. So my question from all the representatives from EU and from UK also, so how you are looking forward for infrastructure industry as other countries and other part of the world are also investing in India in the infrastructure sector. So what scope do you think is there in the infrastructure sector specifically, and specifically about the JVs also? Would there be any incentives from your government side for your companies to come to India and get associated with Indian companies for JVs for infrastructure development in India, specifically in road transportation, railway, airport development, and seaport development, and inland waterways also? So about the infrastructure development and companies coming from UK and EU for JV in India. So would you spread some light?
Mr. Gade, do you want to go first, please?
Yes, just of course that is a very interesting and big question, and it also depends. I mean, of course you have infrastructure companies going from Europe to India, and you have some big ship companies who have invested heavily in India. But it also comes back to, it's also a question internally in India, whether you invite companies to join in and to cooperate with huge Indian companies to make big infrastructure projects. I mean, that is also part of it. I think we will probably see more companies also for infrastructure going to India, but it's also how India look into this particular sector, whether they, it is needed or wanted, if I may. But there is a huge potential, because as the question also indicates, I mean, this is one of those sectors where you might say there's a bright future, both for Indian companies, but also for those who may be allowed to join this sector in India. That was not a real answer, but it's not something that can be decided only in Europe or UK. It's also how the Indian government look into this and how it is looked upon, whether it's a kind of a critical sector where you maybe want to have the know-how yourself, or you have to invite people in to get new know-how and then expand the market to also to cover companies from the outside. I think I'll stop here.
Right.
My
yeah, run.
Hello. Yeah, Arian.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, a doctor never goes to a patient. A patient has to go to the doctor. Yes. So therefore, it is the duty of the Indian companies to look for foreign collaboration. They have to make their case. They have to demonstrate to their counterpart in Europe, America, or United Kingdom how they can benefit each other. It's all about benefit. If people get benefit from you, they'll come to you. If the Indian company approach their counterpart, look, today we have got internet. You just have to sit on internet, just for example, when I look for a business, I export supermarket product. So I put St. Martin or Island or Barbados, list of supermarket in Barbados. I get a list of supermarket, I send them an email. This is what I can do. Yes. So it's so easy for the Indian company to communicate with their counterpart in another country. There are so many chambers of commerce. There are so many departments of trade, international development, industry, and everything. So you are not going to get something sitting at home. You got to make the effort, and you have to connect with people who can actually benefit you, and you can benefit them. It is all about making the connection. If you sit there in India hoping some foreign European company will come and invest in you, then you will be sitting there forever. So you have to get up, you have to connect with people. You say, this is what we do, and we think by collaborating with you, we can quadruple our business. You will have benefit, we will have benefit. And that's how I've done. I mean, my background. I only started with £2, and today it's in 130 countries. But, efforts are in our hands. Rewards are in the hand of God. You have to put the effort and leave the rest to Almighty. Thank you.
Certainly. Sir, but my question was a bit different from this.
Mr. Chahan,
Any promotional schemes from the EU government, means countries' governments, and to the company, as USA is providing this support to their companies under USTDA department. So what they are doing, governments are promoting their companies to come to India and join hand with Indian companies to start infrastructure project in different fields. So are there any schemes from the government sides from UK and from EU countries to promote their companies, also giving some incentives to their companies, those who even if we invite them to come to India?
This is exactly what I was saying.
Advantage.
This is exactly what I was saying, that people in India have to make the effort to connect with the Department of Trade and Industry and find out, go to their website. Yes. So, you have to do something yourself. You just can't wait for people to come to you. If you want to make a dinner, you have to get up and make the dinner. So you have to connect, find what schemes are available in which country by connecting with the Department of Trade and Industry, because the Department of Trade Industry exists to support, in Britain, they give them finance support, they give them loan guarantee and all sorts of things. But somebody from the other side, from India, have to make the connection, and make them aware of the opportunity which you can offer.
Maybe just a remark, besides being chairman of the European Parliament's delegation to India, I'm also chairman of the new European Indian Business Council. And this is some of those things we will work with. That is exactly what the gentleman just asked for. I mean, try to connect companies from the European Union with Indian companies. I mean, I fully agree with what has been said, that of course you have a responsibility being a company in India, but this new business will try to, to help companies both from India and to get connected.
Thank you, Mr. To all the audience and participants, don't worry, we'll send all the details to your email and in the chat message. So you've got all the contact details so you can approach them for any queries in the future. And may I thank Mr. Surangade and Lord Ranger for spending time with us and giving their valuable inputs, answering questions. Your commitment is obviously very helpful for us, and I hope your cooperation with India, Europe, UK remains a high standards, and we'll be in touch for all future events. You're welcome to stay. Obviously, you're quite busy, but you're welcome to stay. But the core theme of the summit is the 2 panel discussions, which we're going next. So may I hand over to Sujit and Arun for the next.
Uday, also, I would also like to thank Dr. Keshav Rao. Uday, I would also like to thank Dr. Keshav Rao for his inputs and his discussions and stuff. It was really good of him to, obviously it was last minute, but then it was really good that he could sort of come in and participate in the discussion. Arun, I just pass it on to you to take forward the discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sujit, and thank you, Councillor Aryan. It's now time for us to get into the panel discussion on strengthening cooperation between India and the UK. For just sure, I did know spot all the people speakers. The speakers who are not caught up in the list makers. Ms. Priyanka Mahanti, UK Director of KILA, Mr. Pranav Bhanot, co-founder India-UK Legal Exchange Program, and Mr. Ian Matthews, partner, Moore Kingston Smith LLP, and Mr. Amarjit Singh, CEO, India Business Group. Now invite Mr. Manpreet Singh, President, Indian Chamber of International, to take the honors and moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Arunji. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Manpreet Singh.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
First of all, thank you to EICBI and Sujit for having me here today. And this is a very interesting panel discussion when we talk about strengthening the relations between 2 countries that are already connected since decades or centuries, if I may say so. So it's not something that you're starting from scratch. It is something that you have to actually reinvent. So this is the most interesting part when you say strengthening the relationships and the bilateral cooperation between India and the UK. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And we have some lovely panelists with us today. We have, like Arun has already introduced briefly, Ms. Priyanka. Priyanka Mahanti is the UK Director from KILA. Welcome, Priyanka. Would you be kind enough to please give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Manpreet. Thank you, Arian, and thank you, Sujit and Arun, for organizing this, first of all. And before this, the talks and the speakers were very interesting, and I got a lot of insights into how Europe, UK, and India can work together in the future. And to add more value to this discussion, I think this panel will contribute a bit more. So about myself, I want to keep it short and not bore you all. So I am the UK Director for KILA Corporate Transactions, which is a boutique investment firm headquartered in the Netherlands, and I head the UK side of the operations. So I hail from the beautiful country, India, but I've been in the UK for over a decade now. So I have my roots deep in India as well as in the UK, so I understand how both the countries operate. So I have been very active in the financial and investment industry over the past 10 years or so. And before that, I've worked with companies like Larsen & Toubro and Cummins, which are multinational conglomerates in itself. And I've also had the opportunity briefly to work with UK India Business Council. And from there, I've been working with KILA, which is a boutique investment firm, like I mentioned. And I'm here to talk a bit more about how we can strengthen the cooperation and collaborate better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. So like you mentioned, finance and investments, well, that is the base for any trade relations, if you really ask me. That's the foundation for wherever you begin. It's like Lord Rami mentioned, it started from £2. That shows your integrity, that shows your dedication, and that shows where you can reach with if you're really dedicated and you know what to do and when to do it. So going back to that, Priyanka ji, how can we see more Indian companies setting up shop in the UK and vice versa?
Sure.
What's your opinion on the same?
So, Manpreet, on that, I think Lord as well as Mr. Gode also mentioned a bit about how we can kind of accelerate this process of cross-border transactions. So basically, we have a lot of associations and platforms already established by the UK government, like CII, there's FICCI, there's JETCO, there's EICBI, who's kindly organized this event. And these are just a few who are championing the cause of cross-border transactions. And to put things into perspective, India is the second largest investor into the UK. And the UK is the sixth largest investor into India. So you can see that there are very strong trade relations and investment relations happening between both the countries. I think moving forward, currently our trade deals, I think, lie around over 20 billion USD. But I think there is a lot of opportunity and scope to grow it to around 50 to 100 billion in the future. UK companies, on one hand, can take advantage of the youth population available in India. In 2011, it was 50% of the Indian population was under 24 years of age. That is a huge population that the UK companies can take advantage of. And on the other hand, the UK obviously is the best at a lot of things in terms of technology, in terms of education, in terms of pioneering in renewable energy, which is becoming a big demand around the world. So I think that's where UK and India can collaborate in the fields of research, in the fields of education, in the fields of financial technology, as well as, like Lord mentioned, we could look at setting up funds, investments or VC funds, which could kind of promote Indian companies at the SME stage. So that's what I think would kind of help more and more interactions and exchanges between both the countries.
Very true, Priyanka ji. And I think, you very mentioned about the VC funds and how you can set up the company, and especially for small and medium businesses. And with the new laws that have been enacted in India, we've started the OPC, which is a one-person company which can be started in India. So I think that is something that really can be focused upon, and that can assist a British individual also to set up in the UK, in India, and utilize the huge demographic, the huge customer base that is there, and that can be taken up by British companies. And similarly, these things have been enacted in the UK since a while now. So it's pretty much easy for an Indian company or an Indian citizen to go to the UK and set up. So, Priyanka ji, so what do you think? We need to do more to iron out the bottlenecks that are there in these systems.
So in my experience, Manpreet, I have seen a lot of Indian companies who have very mature dreams and motivations in terms of reaching out to the world. But in terms of, I think what holds them back is like to set up shop in the UK, I think is the expense factor. Like for SMEs, it's very difficult. Our FX rates are incredible. Like each pound translates into nearly 100 rupees. So it's very difficult for a small sized SME to come to the UK, kind of capture the market here. And UK is a one point, I would say, source to access the Western market. Like even if you have to move to the US, if you have some understanding of the UK, I think that gives you a better advantage of being an Indian company. Like you'd see a lot of companies who've kind of moved to the UK, for example, Oyo, there's Ola, who are kind of spreading their success in countries like the UK. And I think the world is an oyster for them, because I think they can move on to other countries once they've established themselves here. So the whole idea of people like us to come together in such a forum is, Manpreet, I think it's very important that we put our brains together and kind of make it easier for even UK companies to go to India, because India has a few bottlenecks, like we all know about them. Like, bureaucracy is one of them. There's a bit of red tapeism. You have to like fill in a lot of forms. So how can we make these easier for a foreign company? It could be a UK based company or a European company. Once they go to India, how can we make their lives easier? How can we shorten the time span required currently to kind of go and register a company in India and, you know, set up shop there, and vice versa. In UK, it's pretty easy for an Indian company to come and basically register themselves, you know, have appoint maybe a UK director and, you know, start their operations. We have to make the UK companies' life easier as well from the Indian perspective, because India is a very, very large country, very diverse population, and at the same time, a huge consumer market. So if a lot of companies are not going to India, I think they are losing out on a lot, because you have a huge middle class population who could actually buy into these services and products that the UK companies have to offer. So how we can come together and, you know, make these things easier, these iron out these bottlenecks, is, I think, the task that we all have to take back from this session.
So rightly said. And, you know, I think we all are aware that every country has its own set of challenges and its own advantages, of course. So keeping on that, I'll be getting back to you, Priyanka. I would like to now invite Mr. Pranav Bhanorji. Pranavji is the co-founder of the India-UK Legal Exchange Program. Welcome, Pranavji, to this session.
Hi there, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry, I'm in between the campaign. We've got elections next week, so I'm sorry, I'm in the car at the moment.
No problem at all. I'll try to be quick.
That's okay. No. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, what are the current hurdles that you think are preventing a closer business cooperation between the UK and Europe and in India?
You see, I speak from a legal perspective, and I think Priyanka's made some very good comments, and so have the speakers before me, so thank you all very much. I think at the moment, the key difficulty from a legal perspective is the lack of liberalization of the legal markets in India. I think there is so much potential. There is a massive middle class, as Priyanka has said. But I think, if India is going to be the hub for more and more corporations from around the world, and particularly the UK, if it's going to be the place where startups are going to thrive from the UK and Europe, then I think their legal teams and their lawyers need to follow. And I appreciate there is all sorts of sentiments as to whether, law firms should be able to set up in India. I appreciate there is some anxiety from currently formed law firms in India as to what will happen to the legal market if international firms come in. However, I do feel that a prerequisite of having more and more corporations going into India is that their legal teams can follow. And so I very much hope that beyond, the very kind of the special areas that already allow for international law firms going in, I very much hope that more and more international firms can follow. I think it can only be a benefit for India, as well as the trading relationship between different nations, including the UK and India itself.
Pranav, so what do you think? There's more scope for the small firms or the larger firms that you think that need to access India, such a huge legal system, if I may say so, within India. So do you think there's more small and medium companies that are into the legal operations, or the large ones, if you might say so?
I think a mixture. I mean, I have these massive firms coming in with what's going to happen to the current Indian firms, and I can completely understand that. But there are many boutique firms that are now setting up in the UK that are servicing the fintechs, servicing the startups, who have all got their eyes in India. So I think actually just being able to have any organization, any legal law firm to potentially set up shop in India, I think can only be a benefit from a trading perspective and from making India a more attractive place for organizations to set up. But you see, I think there's also a fundamental other issue beyond just the legals. IPOS Mori, which does a lot of our polling in this country and abroad, did a recent poll. And one thing they said was they did a survey on how much of an interest there is between young millennial Indians and young millennial British people. And one of the very interesting stats they came up with is 74% of Indian nationals know a fair or good amount about the UK, but only 26% of British millennials know a good or fair amount about India. So what that really tells me is that there is a gap. Young Indians are more interested in the UK from this survey than UK nationals are about India. And I think really we've got to close that gap. There has to be a more focused interest in the millennials in the Britain over to look at India. You know, it can't just be one way. And I think that's really going to be fundamental as far as trade is concerned.
Actually, that is very rightly said by you. So what do you really think? You know, we need to come together as more of a people-to-people contact, or it has to be more like a government-driven effort?
You see, there's no question, as Lord Rami Ranger has said, Ian Duncan Smith has said, the governments, you know, they're very, they get on very well. You know, we saw that. We saw the sensitivities in Great Britain when Boris Johnson had to cancel his plans to go to India 2 weeks ago. We saw how sensitively that was dealt with by the government. I think the government relations are very strong. My concern isn't with the government. My concern is from people to people, from the next generation of millennials in Great Britain to the millennials in India. Because if people aren't connecting, if people don't have the appetite in the Great Britain to connect with the people in India from a millennial perspective, then trade is going to come to a standstill in any event. So one of the reasons we set up the legal exchange program was for lawyers, junior lawyers and senior lawyers from UK and India to at least get some better understanding about how the two countries are operating from a legal perspective, from a policy perspective, from a courts perspective. And that's really our aim. We want to create a greater interest between lawyers of the two countries. And I think we need to do that in lots of different industries as well.
True, very true. I'll be coming back to you in a while. I'd like to now call Mr. Ian Matthews, who's the partner of Moore Kensington Smith LLP. Ian, are you around?
I am, yes. Hi.
Hi. Welcome to today's session. You know, what would you really, your key ask from both the governments be so that, you know, you can facilitate trade?
Of course. We've been working with the UK-India corridor now for 30 odd years. I know I don't look it. But one of the real main areas we've focused in on in that relationship is the service trade. It's that service industry and the people that facilitate that. That there are more, predominantly tech businesses, that there are more actual Indians applying for visas and actually in the UK than all the other countries put together. And that's because they are job creators. They really create so much investment and economic activity in the UK. And so immigration is such a key part of that relationship. And that's both ways. And so to try and really promote India on an equal par and footing as the US and some of our European partners, we've actually worked with the CII actually in promoting a social security agreement, which there isn't one actually, and that requires a little bit from both governments really to really look at. So to put into perspective, if an Indian business comes over to the UK and transfers a member of staff on a visa, they get the first 52 weeks of national insurance contributions exempt. But if someone from America comes over, they get 5 years. And it's the whole argument of actually of recognizing that India is such an important trading partner for us that actually we need to treat them as such. And I'm not saying that the UK government is to blame on this one at all. Actually, it has to be an agreement between two, and there has to be a bit of give and take from both parties. Indian businesses employ about 150,000 people in the UK, but actually there are about 500, about 600 companies in India, and thousands of Indian employees actually as well. So it's really to make that as easy as masks, I'd say, and actually a relatively inexpensive way of doing this would be to have a social security agreement to put people on an equal par.
Actually, that's very true, and that's a huge disparity if you really ask me between 5 years and a few weeks. So, do you think that sometimes, it's all about asking? So do you think that nobody ever asked to be put on an equal footing, or maybe there was no awareness among the Indian communities like PICIA or CII that would have put forth this to their counterparts or to the British government saying that, oh, X and Y is getting so many years and we're getting few weeks. So sometimes it's all about asking. What do you say to that?
We've been banging the drum for this with CII in a joint report we've initially released 4 years ago. We re-released it last year. And we're really trying to grasp the nettle on this one, because one of the key parts of the JETCO as well is that CII have been allocated some key elements to campaign around. And a lot of lobbying bodies have, such as EICBI, have those key asks. There are many of them, and it's getting open the doors to the right people. And for me, when previously met with Prime Minister Modi, and I actually echo the rest of the panel, there's an obvious connection there with the governments between India and the UK, and it's really incumbent on us as well to really shout about those asks and to really promote and to really fight for it, because if we're not careful, we're going to struggle to really cement those common bonds that we have as nations. It's a trade that we do amongst the countries. The UK is an important trading partner to India, but Germany is actually even more an important one if you look at purely at the figures. And we shouldn't just assume because we have a shared love of cricket and other things that the frontier. And yeah, you're right. It's incumbent on us to really keep arguing and really pushing the points, such as this.
True. I think that's where we need people like you to really drive the point through. So I'll be coming back to you in a while. So now I'd like to bring up you, CEO of the India Business Group. Amarjit, welcome.
I thank you, Manpreet and Sujit and colleagues. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon. So, my question to you is, there have been quite a few high-level bilateral visits and government talks between India and the UK. And 2021 is seen as new era between India and the UK relations, especially post-Brexit. Everybody is expecting magic and miracles to happen. Can you tell us more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's well recognized that the mood music has shifted and it's very more upbeat. And if we look at the last 6 months, there's been a flurry of British senior ministers that have traveled into India despite the pandemic with the view to exploring and negotiating the enhanced trade partnership between both countries. And there's a real commitment from both nations to kind of provide a more comprehensive and stronger trading relationship, more business, more investment. As we heard from other panelists, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was supposed to visit India twice this year, but was forced to cancel due to the pandemic. We're expecting Prime Minister Modi or senior Indian ministers visit the UK later for the G7 taking place in June, Cornwall, also for the COP26. But it's not just confined at the government level. I think if we look at particularly what's happened in the last week in India, the devastating effects of the pandemic, and we all stand fully in full support and solidarity with our family and friends and the people of India. But we've had a number of businesses step up throughout the pandemic and in the last week to offer support. We've had the Indian diaspora. There's been a number of appeals raised by organizations like the EICBI, CBI, the British Asian Trust. So I think there's a genuine desire in both countries to do more together. And actually, it's really important given the UK's kind of tilt towards the Indo-Pacific with their new review, with Brexit, as you mentioned. India is a key trading nation. I mean, predicted by the IMF, of course, to grow at 12.5% post 2022. So I think the broader landscape is more conducive of better engagement between both countries, not just at government levels. Governments just provide the framework for businesses to interact and actually trade and exchange.
Perfect, I would say. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up, especially when the trade increases, the opportunities also increases rather exponentially, if I may say so. So do you think that what could be the key opportunities that could come out or emerge from an enhanced partnership between the UK and India?
So the enhanced trade partnership is obviously envisaged to provide a kind of route map towards strengthening and growing trade, with a view to leading to a kind of all-encompassing, a comprehensive free trade agreement. I think the opportunities are really broad and touch across all sectors. And so if you look at where the collaboration exists at the moment, you've got advanced manufacturing, healthcare, education. There's more scope with things like legal services. We've just heard from Pranav that liberalization has been on the cards for many, many years. But India is gradually opening up in certain sectors. If you look at the FDI cap changes recently in the defense sector, in the insurance sector. So I think they're broad, but where I think the greatest potential perhaps lies, and this was touched upon by Priyanka, I think is in technology, because both nations are technology innovators. They're digitally driven. And if we look at some of the work happening at the moment in both countries coming together to produce new age technologies, green technologies, which will address some of the pressing climate change issues. So there's already a strong springboard within the tech space. And if we look at the inbound investment in the UK, telecoms and technology is the largest sector. There's a number of big Indian brands in the UK like TCS, HCL, Wipro, Infosys. They're servicing the public and private sectors, but equally you've got disruptive UK startups and scale-ups which are going into India to provide those new age technologies and solutions. So I think technology in terms of e-tech, med-tech, fin-tech, agri-tech, the list goes on, will actually be an explosive area in the short to mid-term as being mutually beneficial to both countries, but also addressing some of the cross-cutting global challenges facing the world.
Very true. Thank you, Amarjit, for that point of view. And you really mentioned your emphasis on the tech partnerships and the technology-wise that we're going on. On the technology part and about people-to-people contact, Priyanka, I'd like to come back to you on this one. How do you think that the industry academic partnerships can flourish? And how can India collaborate with the universities and the companies in the UK and contribute to research, which is one of the most important, especially when you talk about fintech. Fintech is changing the world completely, and it's a different ball game altogether right now.
Sure. Thanks, Manpreet, and thanks, Amarjit, for your very valuable insights. Yeah, very interesting question, Manpreet. And obviously, this is the right time to talk about it because we are talking about how we can strengthen the collaborations between both the countries. So, as you would know, a lot of these bodies that Amarjit just mentioned, like, for example, CII, FICCI, UKIBC, even EICBI, they are all strengthening cross-border transactions, exchange of information. There are a lot of universities which are actually using platforms such as UKIBC to enter the Indian market and collaborate and partner with Indian universities. And when you're talking about academic collaborations, you're also talking about research. So there's the UK-India Education and Research Initiative, which also takes care of and kind of strengthens collaboration in the field of research. In the private sector, a very good example of collaboration in the field of research is the healthcare sector, like what you just saw in terms of vaccines. So vaccines were created so quickly because both the countries exchanged information and both the countries worked so well together that we were able to come up with a miracle vaccine such as the Oxford vaccine. So these are just some examples of to show how research can kind of benefit in the academic as well as in the corporate sector between both the countries. And in the field of fintech, so India is a pioneer in terms of fintech, but limited to, I would say, payment systems. Like we are using Paytm extensively in India everywhere. So it's I think case studies should be done on this, because how well India has kind of adapted to using payment systems like Paytm. Like even the smallest shop vendors are using Paytm to take or cash in their payments while they're selling their products. So it's a very, very interesting and innovative system that India has adapted to in the name of fintech. But I think where UK and India can kind of partner is in the field of wealth management and open banking, because you look at companies such as Revolut and Nutmeg, which are really huge in the UK now. And they kind of add value in the wealth management and open banking fintech system in the UK. So these are the kind of technologies which can be adapted to in India as well, because there are a lot of wealth management companies and banking institutions in India who could, take heed to all these technologies and kind of build them inside their systems. And the end consumer would actually benefit, because a lot of people, I think India has a very large population who are using smartphones. So it's this kind of ability to adapt would be very, very easy. And I think over a small period of time, this could be executed. So those are my thoughts on fintech.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you think that it's relatively easy? It would be relatively easy for a fintech company from the UK to enter the Indian market, or you think that it's going to be having its own share of challenges? You mentioned the case of Paytm, that it's reached to every nook and corner. Do you think it would be as simple for a British company?
Well, see, nothing is easy when you're like any Indian company to move to the UK or open operations in Europe is challenging as well. But I think there are a number of set challenges that you would encounter any country in the world that you go to. But I think what would really help is on the ground local expertise that India can lend, like associations like EICBI or UKIBC or CII, FICCI. So these are very good forums where the companies don't directly have to go and reach out to a partner. They can go through any of these bodies and make their lives easier, and they can help them partner with these banking institutions. So a lot of the banking in India is done through a lot of public sector banks as well as private sector banks. There are very few boutique firms which have kind of flourished, unlike the UK and Europe. So I think there is a lot of scope there of, not just micro lending platforms, but boutique investment firms flourishing in India. And they can kind of adapt to these fintech technologies like wealth management and open banking way quicker than these large banks, like, for example, the public sector banks in India. So for them, the progression will be slower. And I think for the newer private sector banks, it would be much easier. That's my feeling.
Very true. And I think with such complicated, small and large and the huge demographic, it comes with its own set of legal problems that you can get entangled with. On the legal point, I would like to bring in Pranav again. Pranav, are you around?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, what do you think, what changes would you like to see in the legal framework between the two regions?
Well, the first thing is I would like to see have been, particularly the Financial Times recently, have been somewhat quite negative towards India, maybe for good reason. For example, there was a big Vodafone case, and I think one of the big kind of perceptions that are coming across is, if you are subject to a court case in India, the chances are that an Indian company may fold, or it'll be very difficult to enforce a judgment against them. So I would like to see, I think, if anything, more emphasis on a better reputational management, I think, of the Indian legal system in the UK, because I think that is really going to be something that's going to put people off, if I'm being honest. And I'm sure the legal system, there's room for improvement in any legal system, wherever you are in the world. But I think that the impression that lots of people are getting in the UK is that the Indian legal system is incredibly slow. It's, there isn't always the transparency and the independence as there ought to be. And I really would like to see that perception, because I'm not saying that's necessarily the reality. I don't know enough about it, but I'd like to see that perception certainly improving.
True, I think that's true, and some of the points that you mentioned are very much valid, and that's what across geographies we have also seen. So that would change the narrative completely if things are taken care of.
I'll give you an example. This week I read in the Times, there wasn't a story about how judges in Delhi managed to get a suite or a floor in the Ashoka Hotel in Delhi just for themselves, for the sake of oxygen. Now, I don't know whether it's true, and it's not really for me to judge whether it's true or not, but that's an example of the kind of stories that are getting filtered down in the UK press about, things like the independence of the judiciary and the influence the judiciary have in India. And I would like to see an improvement in the legal perceptions between, for both countries really, but certainly the perception that the UK public have of the Indian legal system does need to be improved. Otherwise, it could be a deterrent for organizations to set up, because they'll be worried about whether the legals are going to support them.
True. Actually, that's a much disputed article, but let's not get into that. So, the more and more we get the legal things getting involved, the companies getting involved, that is when you would really need access to markets. So that brings us back to the UK-India free trade deal that it's been working on since a while. What do you think that it would be like?
Sorry, the question, a free trade.
How do you think the free trade agreement between the UK and India will be?
Well, I'm hoping
the main point of emphasis.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will go beyond vehicles and whiskey, which I think at the moment everyone's focusing on, about improvement of tariffs between the two. But actually, I think the UK and Japan free trade agreement is actually quite a good starting point in my view. I think certainly food will become a big part of it. Alcohol will be a big part. Vehicles will be a big part. Technology will be a big part. So I think there'll be numerous industries that will really benefit from better tariffs between the two countries. I wish I knew more, but I simply don't, because I don't think there's been very much that's been disclosed at this stage.
True, very true, and that is what we need to push in that point. That coming back to the point where we need to ask that, okay, this is what we need, this is what the industry needs, and this is what the businesses from both the countries need, and we need, this is the points of where the trade would become easier. So that brings me to Ian back again. Ian, are you around?
I am.
Okay, so in this kind of a scenario, what are the main reasons that your Indian clients come to you and ask you to set up in the UK?
Well, we have two types of Indian clients looking to set up in the UK. You've either got one which is trying to set up from scratch, so setting up their own operations in the UK, looking to then really develop it as a market. In those situations, the main attraction really is the UK as a market generally. It is the 5th biggest economy. It is, as mentioned by the panel earlier, it's a great case study to then replicate to across the world. So a lot of my Indian-based businesses who've set up in the UK are truly global. Actually, they are very, very mobile. It's, if they're setting up in the UK, make success of it, they then replicate that in the US or mainland Europe. So they for me, that is one great pull for that. But also it's the common law. I know there are obvious issues, as already mentioned, but there is a lot in common as well. There's a common language. There's that connection I was talking about earlier as well. One of the key things to really consider when I advise my clients on when they do set up in the UK, it's trying to find out what their plan is to really go in and understand what's their value proposition going to be coming into the UK, because making that decision of who knows the company and who knows the market, and just trying to make sure that there's the right marriage there. The second type of business that I really deal with is when it's established UK Indian business looking to directly buy into the UK. We did a study last year and actually found that one of the main reasons people were looking to acquire in the UK, and as mentioned by some of the guys previously, predominantly in the tech market, because the UK is seen as a natural partner in that, it's to acquire high growth businesses, to look at the niche businesses which can bolt on and really add on. If you look at some of the top Indian businesses last year, and just looking at acquisitions they did within India, because last year was still a busy year for TCS and Wipro on the acquisition trail, they were looking at companies that would actually add value, were high growth. It was that capability that they were acquiring. And actually looking at the businesses, which are a lot of the acquisitions in the UK over the last year, it's been to acquire those niche capabilities. Last year, there were about 27 deals of Indian companies acquiring a European-based company, 10 of which were in the UK, 4 of which were tech. It's really looking at that element and actually saying, well, actually, the UK is highly attractive for this. And then it's us advising our clients, going, look, come here to the UK, acquire these, look at the highly, still, in my opinion, one of the biggest tax incentives in the world with our R&D tax credit, looking at patent box, looking at our IP protections. It's all of that really paints an overall picture, which makes it very attractive to my clients.
True. And I'm sure that it's actually and in reality very much attractive. Being here, sitting here, I can tell you that this is the place to be. So that brings me to my last question for the session. That would be to Amarjit Singh ji. Amarjit ji, what one advice would you give to the UK businesses that are looking to India as a market, and vice versa, where the Indian businesses are looking to get into the UK?
Thank you. So India Business Group, we've been advising SMEs and big businesses and universities on cross-border deals, transactions, joint ventures for over a decade now. And I think if we look at how successful entry strategies have been formed, well, a lot of it's basic stuff. So you've got to do your homework on understanding the regulations which apply to your particular sector, product, technology, or service. And I'm sure that advice will be seconded by all the eminent lawyers on this particular chat. You've got to do on the ground detailed market research, because, for example, if you're going from the UK into India, well, it's essentially 28 different countries at different stages of economic development, with different business environments, with different priorities. So you've got to be ultra focused and specific. So you've got to narrow in on not just a state, but a city or a region. How do you penetrate those business networks to really understand that the kind of local intelligence, what are the price points that will actually be sustainable? You can't adopt a one size fit all approach in India. But I think my biggest advice would be, and this is where, I've also got a legal background, so we've advised on kind of legal as well as consulting, and where we've seen relationships go wrong is where a business in either jurisdiction finds the wrong partner. So I think investing, doing your due diligence in potential business partners at an early stage, and actually sense making with them in terms of making sense of the landscape, the strategic vision and intent. So are you aligned in the short, mid and long term on what success may look like? So those are the kind of really practical areas where I think businesses can really help minimize their outlay, because going into global markets is not just expensive, but a long-term affair. But it can also help them maximize opportunities and success and scale up and achieve larger outcomes in a shorter timescale and investment.
Thank you, Amarjit, so much. With that, I'd like to open the forum for a question or two for the panelists. If anybody would like to ask a question, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself and ask your question, and please let us know who you're asking it to. Anyone for the questions? Somehow I find, this is the most difficult part.
Manpreet Singh ji, we are running about 20 to 30 minutes late for the next panel discussion. So if the request is for the panelists and the audiences to type in the questions, and let's finish the second panel discussion and then come back to the Q&A. Hope that is fine with you.
Yeah, perfectly fine, perfectly fine. With that, I'd like to really thank Arun ji, Sujit ji, and my entire panel today. Priyanka Manti from Kaila, Pranab Banochi from India UK Legal Exchange Program. Thank you, Ian Matthews, who's the partner with Mook & Smith LLP, and Amarjit Singh ji, who's the CEO of the India Business Group. Thank you so much. You've been a lovely panel.
Great. I've heard them before, and now it was a pleasure to see you moderate, Manpreet Singh ji. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Now, let's getting to the next panel discussion. Let me quickly call upon the names of our panelists. Stephanie Benaglia, Senior Expert Public Diplomacy Project and European Delegation to India. And Mr. Joel Fernandez, Project Lead, Business Support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues. And Ms. Zain Smith, EU-India Policy Analyst. And Mr. Kunal Singh, Founding Partner of Kobe Consult. And with this, I'd like to call upon Mr. Abhinav Kumar, Board Member, Europe-India Business Council, and also CMO Market at the TCS. Mr. Abhinav Kumar.
Thank you, Arun. Thanks. It's such a pleasure to be here, and what a fascinating discussion it's been so far, hearing from the four members of Parliament, and of course, this very engaging and high energy panel discussion right now on India and EU, the bilateral relationship. As always, this panel is going last. We need to keep your attention, and we'll look to earn it. And we've got a fantastic set of panelists in here, which you've kindly introduced. Let me also commend the Europe India Center for Business and Industry on holding this third summit. It's very timely, given the formal India-EU summit taking place just a week from now, next Saturday in, well, technically in Porto in Portugal, but of course it's being converted to a virtual summit given current circumstances. It's also, while it's an opportune time, it's also a very poignant time, because in India, as we acknowledged earlier on in this session, it's a difficult time for so many people with the pandemic at the height of its outbreak. So, I join all of you in expressing solidarity to people in India. Many of you have friends, partners, colleagues who are going through difficult circumstances or have, suffered losses inside the people, their networks and families. So we absolutely offer solidarity to all of them. This panel is a really exciting one. I think we have 4 people who have been recognized by EICBI over the last couple of years under their program of India-EU40 under 40. I've always found that to be a very commendable initiative, because when you look at awards and rankings, usually the recipients of those tend to be, the nominal heads. It's a prime minister or a CEO of a company or whatever being recognized for the efforts of their organization. I think what's great about this list is that you're recognizing individuals who've played a significant role in promoting the bilateral relationship, but also who are, as the name suggests, young enough that they're going to have a significant role to play over the next 2 decades, and an increasingly more important role. So we've got 4 great panelists. They have very long introductions. I think I know we're running late for time. So if for what I'll suggest to any of the audience here is, their names, you can look up their profiles and their accomplishments. I think EICBI has also shared their profiles inside their lists and other things. But what's exciting about this panel also is that they bring a set of views from various different parts of Europe as well. So we have people who've experienced and have lived in the eastern part of Europe, in the Nordic regions, in the southern periphery of Europe, and of course Western Europe, and of course many of them have been engaged or do hail from India. So I think I'd prefer to go straight into the discussion. And first off, just to invite all of them. So Zane, Joel, Stefania, and Kunal, a very, very warm welcome to the four of you here. If I may, I'd like to start with Zane. But before we kick this off, I'd like to put the last question on the panel first, so you get roughly about an hour or so to think about it. But I'll come back to the question right at the end of the discussion. So the last question is this. If you had to choose one word to describe what the India-EU relationship is going to be over the next 10 years till 2030, what would that one word be? So the panelists have an hour to think about it. For the rest of you, if we have a very accomplished audience here as well, feel free to join in the chat and share what your word is on that score. So I'd like to start off with Zana. So Zana is a policy analyst. She has a lot of expertise under her, but I think for the purpose of this panel, we're focusing a lot on her expertise in the education side of things. The education sector, as we all know, over the last year has been dramatically impacted by the COVID pandemic. UNESCO said that more than 1 billion students had their studies impacted in some way or the other over the last years. And of course, it's been different situations in different places. In India and in the UK, the schools have opened recently after long periods of shutdown. In Europe, parts of Europe have operated the school system successfully through the pandemic. So Zana, if you look at the education sector, and it's in the stage where it's either opened or it's reopening and so forth, what's the role you feel that the education sector can play in furthering this bilateral relationship between the European Union and India?
Thank you very much for the question. Just to clarify, and in line with the previous remarks that were expressed about the value of the people-to-people interactions, I take part in my personal capacity. So let me start with an appraisal of the EU-India strategic partnership, a roadmap to 2025. We are very fortunate to have a comprehensive reference point for guidance. The roadmap covers both business and higher education, and thus there is no need to reinvent the wheel, I would say. My previous research focuses on higher education and research cooperation, as well as science diplomacy and educational diplomacy. The existing literature on both of the mentioned strands of diplomatic studies show that full-time studies abroad or exchange programs are valuable for acquiring diverse academic and applied training. And therefore, the section on people-to-people contacts of the roadmap is so vital for the EU-India partnership.
Thank you, Zani. I think that the point on people-to-people is very well taken, right? To have a successful bilateral relationship, it's not just the institutional and the intergovernmental contacts, but so much is done by people-to-people. And that was the point I was also making with recognizing this India-EU40 under 40. It are the efforts which all of you are making end up forging the bilateral relationship in so many ways. If I may turn to Stefania next. Stefania is a fellow at CEPS, the Center for European Policy Studies, and in Brussels, she's considered one of the foremost experts on India and EU relations. She's lived in India and New Delhi and routinely writes articles and talks about it. So Stefania, an interesting time. We have the summit coming up next Saturday. Now, if you look at the last summit, if you go back to July last year, I think one of the accomplishments of that summit was the fact that the India-EU strategy roadmap up till 2025 was formally adopted. It's quite an interesting and exhaustive document. There are 118 points in it, if I'm not mistaken. And if we are to look now towards next week, what are your expectations on what could be possible concrete outcomes of this summit? That's my first question to you. And the second one is, if you look at this roadmap of 118 points, 118 points are a lot to keep track of. So how do both sides ensure that we're staying honest on implementing that agenda which has been decided? What could be the best governance framework to put in place to ensure that there's real progress made and not just, a joint statement made to that effect. Stefania?
Thank you. If I may actually start with your second question, because when you have a summit, indeed, is a good thing to take stock of what happened in between the summits. So now we're about to have one. What happened in between 9, 10 months ago and now? We all know that the EU-India partnership has been accused of under-delivering. But if we actually look at what has been happening at high level between these 9 months, it's actually staggering. I mean, we had the first maritime security dialogue that happened in January. We had this month only, we had the human rights dialogue that has been resumed since 2013. We had the digital 5G artificial intelligence talk as well at high level. We had foreign and security consultations. They met twice, and I'm actually having the doubt that maybe I'm missing a third trade high-level meeting. So, I mean, if we actually put this number of high-level meetings in the context of broader EU-India relation, we can actually see that finally we have moved on from the joint statement. We all agree on common values to let's do something. And we see the speed on which the implementation is actually going ahead, which is clearly a good thing. And so now, coming to the expectation of what we expect for next week, we actually see three, I think, are the most the deliverable that are expected. One is a degree of convergency on climate change. One is obviously moving forward on the trade issue. There has been already, of course, it has been mentioned several times, and that is obviously a complicated file. And one which is actually, to me, quite interesting, and I would like to say 2 words about it, is a connectivity partnership. Now, what is a connectivity partnership? Because connectivity is a little bit the buzzword that is going on right now, and it's actually difficult to pinpoint what exactly connectivity is. So in the eyes of the EU, this is quite new. It's not in the eyes of Asia, because we know that connectivity partnership in Asia have been implemented since almost a decade in several forms. But for the EU, it's quite a new approach for foreign policy. They have done one connectivity partnership in just a couple of years back with Japan, and that was the first one. And that, unfortunately, is still at a joint statement level, meaning that the implementation still has to be done. But learning from that, they are now trying to agree a connectivity partnership with India, which should be agreed next week. And that is, for me, quite a changing point, because this really enables a different level, like kind of like moving on from the joint statement to the implementing joint common values. That is really the shift that is happening, because this whole connectivity concept does nothing else than simply bringing coherency in a number of all the activities that various actors do in various areas, you know, from energy to people, they kind of like connect all the dots. And it also very importantly, it brings coherency within what the EU and its member states do, which of course, as you know, it can run on different level. So bringing all of this coherency, it really can be a game changer for the foreign policy and the bilateral relations. Of course, I stop here because there has been said much. There is something, a lot to say about this, but I stop here and I go more in detail if it is interesting.
Yeah, we'll come back to you on that, Stefania. But I think it's I think gratifying to note that you see this growing momentum, right, on so many fronts. And in a sense, it's in departure from the past, because, you know, historically, whenever we've spoken, especially in Brussels with any of the European institutions, there's always been this lament about the fact that while there is this strategic partnership with India, it's always been something which has shown potential and promise, but never really gone into implementation. So it's good to see that there's this growing momentum which has come on. I think talking about taking things to execution and being specific, I think earlier in the session, you know, there was that question. I believe it was it Ashutosh who asked the MPs, Lord Ranger in particular, on specifics which will help businesses from both sides, you know, connect and invest into each other. We have with us Joel Fernandez. He's with the EBTC, the European Business and Technology Center, where he looks after the EU-India Policy Dialogue project. Now, through this initiative, I think a lot of very specific things are being done to help businesses on both sides. So Joel, could you talk a little bit about it? Because I think in this room, there are people who are really interested in knowing more about that. And of course, their ecosystems, they can go back and do also let us know where we can learn more about the things which you're doing so that they can go and share it with their networks and ecosystems too.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for having me here. And thanks, Abhinav, for your question. The business support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues project is a direct outcome of the new EU strategy on India, which was adopted in 2018. The aim of this project is to increase business involvement in strategic areas of bilateral cooperation between the EU and India. And these areas of bilateral cooperation form the policy dialogues in the sectors of energy, environment, climate change, ICT, and urbanization. The project was launched in 2019 to support businesses from the EU and to enter India and to actually plug them into the already existing EU-India projects. The EU-India projects are of different types. We have one in the water sector, which is the EU-India40 partnership. We have the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership Project. We also have the ICT standardization and collaboration project between the EU and India. There is a project on urban partnership, and there's a project on resource efficiency and its initiatives. Now, the Indian government had approached the EU for best practices and solutions to come out of the EU and to be adopted in India way back in 2008. And that led to the christening of the European Business and Technology Center. So it led the foundation of the European Business and Technology Center, which is the consortium partner that is implementing this project in India. And in Marseille in 2008, when they adopted this project between the parliamentarians, so it's a brainchild of the European Parliament, the European Business and Technology Center, it was decided to actually handhold EU businesses and create some kind of an ecosystem in India, which would be viable for EU businesses to do business with India. So going back to the member of parliament from the European Parliament, Soren Gade, who mentioned about hand-holding companies, doing some kind of a business matchmaking, supporting EU businesses that want to enter India. EBTC has been doing this ever since 2008. And this project, in terms of some of the activities of the business support project, what we try to do is support them on market information on India. So support the businesses in the EU, advise them on where are the opportunities in India and what could be some of those challenges that these companies could face. We've also created diagnostic tools for companies to check in advance whether they are ready for India. And so we've got this India Readiness Kit, which we launched at the last EU-India Summit, which sort of advises companies to take an online quiz and to see whether they are ready for India. And this quiz has 5 modules, whether it's on finance, whether it's on IPR. IPR is a very important area for EU businesses, so seem to be a little clueless on what are the regulations that are existing in India and what they should know in advance. How do you hire people? So there's a module on on HR, and there's a general business module which can talk to you about what are the cultural norms in India, because we always talk about relationship building in India, and there are things about how do you set up in India, how do you find a partner in India, how do you do due diligence in India. So this India Readiness Kit has all that information. And we also have an EU Excellence in India program that supports EU businesses on the ground. So that program is a membership-led program where we invite EU businesses that focus on sustainability across its value chains. And we sort of give them some kind of visibility. So it's not only a project about helping EU companies come to India, but we also support EU businesses while they are in India. And just yesterday, we launched the EU Green Champions for India program, where we want to support EU businesses that are not yet in India, but have a focus on India, and somehow introduce them to the EU Excellence in India program. So these are companies that are from the EU or that are already in India, and do some kind of peer-to-peer coaching, peer-to-peer understanding of how did you set up in India as an EU company? How do you create a joint tender, for example, as an EU business or an SME that wants to enter India, but is looking out for some kind of a champion in India that can support them in entering the Indian market. So these are some of the areas that we focus on in the business support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues project. So I'll stop there and hand it over to you, Abhinav.
That's very interesting, Joel, particularly the framework you're talking about of the, doing an India readiness test or an index of that sort, right? I think that's quite an interesting thing to do. And probably if they don't have that, there's a potential for doing the reverse, which is for Indian companies to look at a European readiness index, or that might need to be fragmented into 27 separate calculators. I don't know, depends on the thing. I like to bring in Kunal in at this stage, because this topic we're talking about, he's been operating in this field for many years. So he was looking after the India office of the Danish, the Confederation of Danish Industry. And he has since been over the last decade back in Denmark and helping a lot of European businesses navigate their presence in India. Kunal, I think if you look at this, I think in one way, if I'll just rewind and look at this whole session. I think one of the interesting insights for me in this session is this reflects a new dynamic in how India manages and runs its relationships with this part of the world. Because if you look at it historically, and there was a lot of reference to it in the previous panel, for India, always the UK has been its first bridge into Europe, right? And as a consequence of that, all the numbers which were shared, there are about 850 Indian businesses invested in the UK. They make about 50 billion pounds in revenues, and they employ 120,000 or so people in the UK. A lot of those investments were made looking at the UK market, but actually looking at that as the natural point of entry into Europe. Obviously, now this is going to be a triangular relationship, as the session itself is, that there is a three-way relationship here. There's India, UK, India, EU, and of course, the UK EU one being vitally important, as one of the previous panelists made that point, that the UK's trade with Germany is higher than the UK's trade with India, and that will remain so for a while. So I think when you look at all of these, and you're advising Indian businesses which are looking to come into Europe now, what are you talking about in practical terms? Are you still advising them to stay in London, or is there an opportunity here for places like Copenhagen, or it could be the Netherlands or Germany, which are, I'm talking from a language point of view, that might be easier points of integration because of the the proliferation of English, versus some of the southern periphery countries where it's harder to operate in English. I don't know. What are the conversations which are going on with your clients and the people you're advising?
Thank you, Abhinav, for this kind introduction, and thank you all for participating here and having me as part of the panel, and thank you in particular to the distinguished speakers earlier. I've been in this field for more than a decade, as you rightly said, Abhinav, and yet it's always fascinating that when you gather a lot of people with interesting insights and experiences, you always learn new things. And I've also noted down a few new points here today. So I already feel very thankful for being here. Just a small point of clarification, Abhinav. I primarily advise Nordic and Danish companies going into the Indian market, but increasingly also Indian companies looking to the EU. And Europe. So on your first point, it's indeed going to be an overall theme about dispersion, and what I mean by that is that there's not going to be one single answer to that question. You could say, in contrast to earlier, where London was that kind of bridge, one-stop shop bridge, it's going to be a lot more dispersed as per specific sectors and as per specific company types, and the entry modes both when we talk European companies looking to India and Indian companies looking to Europe, the entry modes are also going to be vastly dispersed. And what I mean by that is it can be companies looking to do simple exports of goods and services, as what we see a lot of particularly SMEs do, but it can also increasingly be companies looking to set up joint ventures and different forms of business partnerships with suppliers and distributors and agents and so forth. And it can be increasingly, as India will become or is becoming more of a global manufacturing hub in certain industries, it will be contract manufacturing partnerships and so forth. And more, I think we'll see a trend of mergers and acquisitions as a way, as an increased mode of entering markets, and again, both ways. So I think the key point here is dispersion in terms of how access enter the markets both ways. And before I carry on, I also just want to take a step back and also just mention a brief remark about, we talk about business and business partnerships here today, which is the theme. But I think it's very important to realize that business is part of society, and business takes place between people. And right now, there's a lot of people, as has also been alluded to earlier, a lot of people due to the explosion of the COVID-19 infections. And my deepest thoughts and prayers to those affected, and condolences to those who've lost near and dear ones. I've been in contact with friends and family and business partners all throughout the last few weeks who've been directly and indirectly affected. And it's heartbreaking to see, but at the same time, it's also very empowering to hear about the solidarity and the help between people and NGOs on the ground, kind of bottom up help. And it's also really important that we, as participants here, as part of the European Indian business community, play a very vital societal role, in addition to the core role of commerce that we have here, and contribute with financial and human capital and technical resources in times of crisis. And it's been really heartwarming to see the Indian diaspora and Silicon Valley titans, as well as multinational companies and startups, really contribute. So I think that's really important to see that we don't just operate in a vacuum, but we are part of a larger complex context, and that in addition to this near-term implication that I mentioned of helping, it also has implications on a larger scale, which is very complex global supply chain mechanisms and global interdependencies between companies and societies and so forth. And as was alluded to by several speakers earlier, the geopolitical importance of India vis-a-vis China and so forth, as a strong partner for Europe and EU, cannot be understated. And I think that's going to be the central theme of the partnership and of these 118 points in the roadmap. And the reason why I'm an optimist of more implementation and more effect and impact of these agreements is that there's a heightened increase of interest from both regions.
Thank you, Kunal. I think we'll come back to the supply chain part later in the conversation. I think that's so essential. But to your point on the solidarity around COVID, I think a lot of the previous speakers, especially the members of parliament, spoke about this point about shared values. And I think one of the areas where you saw that in display was in dealing with the COVID situation. So both the European Union as well as India have been fairly generous in sharing vaccines with the rest of the world, right? I think 100 or so countries have benefited from both of them sharing it. Of course, that leads to at times domestic criticism back at home that you haven't solved the problem here, but you're sharing it. But I think, as we all understand, this is a global crisis, and nobody's safe till everyone is safe. And I think that's also an interesting point where, while we talk about values in an esoteric way, when they come in situations like this, you actually see that being followed as ground action. I'll come back to you, Zana. I think one of the and two questions to you, right? I think one of the challenges which when businesses for India look to come and take up this disburse strategy that Kunal was talking about, I think one of the challenges which we need to overcome is that a lot of businesses in India, especially smaller, but even the larger businesses, don't know Europe that well, right? They know certain parts of Europe. I think one of the speakers earlier was talking about, his perception of Europe as West and East and other things. They don't know that. So I think in that sense, how can we improve more knowledge of, especially for smaller countries and all of that? Like maybe if you can talk about Latvia, what do you feel can be done more? The second question to you is, again, looking at the stream, I think one of the key areas in the strategy roadmap, which is a pillar there, is research and innovation. Now, if you look at Europe's Horizon program, which goes on from this year till 2027, I think about just short of 100 billion euros are going to be spent on it. In that, are there any significant opportunities that you see for collaboration with India or for Indian businesses that you may like to share with this audience here?
Thank you very much for your two questions. So I'll start chronologically with the first one. So during the first Asia-Europe Sustainable Connectivity Scientific Conference held last September, I had the pleasure of pointing out towards Latvia as a promising example that the earlier identified gap in student flows from Asia to Europe is gradually decreasing. Latvia is welcoming growing numbers of students from India and other parts and other partner countries of the Asia-Europe meeting. It remains to be explored in greater detail whether Latvia experiences a unique situation in comparison to other countries. So this would be a note of moderate enthusiasm. Regarding your second question, Horizon Europe is by and large guided by the mission-oriented innovation. I assume there'll be lots of weight in this factor for future EU-India cooperation. Whether India and specific entities in India share the same understanding and perhaps the work mode for smooth collaboration in terms of co-creating solutions that are aligned with mission-oriented innovation. In the interest of time, that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zana. Just a word to our to all our friends in the audience here is, if you have questions for the panelists, please do indicate it in the chat, and we'll call upon you to have that conversation with them. Right. Interesting, Zana. I'll come back to you on that point about the student inflows into Latvia and into Europe. I think that's one area of opportunity. The other area of opportunity, which Stefania, you had identified in one of the three outcomes you would like to see from the summit. The second point you made was climate, right? Now, climate has been front and center, both politically and in terms of multilateral discussions. There's also a focal point for it later this year, that in November, the COP26 is going to take place, not in the European Union, but in Europe, in that sense, in Glasgow, in Scotland. When you look at that, what areas do you think? I mean, of course, for Europe, has taken strong policy stances towards its Green Deal. India has made certain investments on solar and other places where it's leading on. But if you look at the climate side, what do you see as sort of the primary areas of opportunity there to boost this bilateral relationship?
Thanks. May I also just make a small remark to what Zane previously said, and what you also pointed out, the fact that there is luckily an increase of students, Indian students in the European universities, and then obviously pointing at the fact that unfortunately the problem is not the very optimistic increase of exchange between universities. But the problem comes after the studies. I mean, these students come, and the capacity of talent attraction in Europe is unfortunately very detrimental, meaning that you have an influx of students, but the problem is then job visas that come after. After finishing the studies, unfortunately, the students are pretty much obliged to leave the EU, and of course, this is a huge loss. But of course, this opens a very big debate, and I don't want necessarily to open it right now, but I'm very aware that that is a structural problem, and I hope it will be addressed as soon as possible. Now, going to climate. When it comes to climate, I would actually reverse the question. What is not an opportunity? I mean, you have the whole, the challenges that are in front of us and the potential that are in front of us are so huge that they actually have a hard time identifying what are not the opportunities that are over there. Because when it comes to all aspects of it, of course, all geared towards the transition of the economy towards a sustainable and green economy. And there you have the whole transition also to a sustainable, you know, to the whole renewable, but also the energy transportation, the energy grid. I mean, the whole ecosystem around the climate change is so much filled with opportunities. Of course, the issue here, and then we come back to the whole connectivity partnership, because energy is one of the 4 ways in which connectivity is interpreted for the EU, which are people to people, and we have been mentioning it, infrastructure, the more classic, you know, roads and bridges, etc., energy, and digital. Digital, we had a little bit in the previous panel, a few words have been said about it, so no need to dwell more into that, but the whole energy, and you give the perfect opportunity. I hope, and this is really the expectation, that this connectivity partnership will provide the tools for the private sector to actually enter this foreign policy. The difference pretty much is that for the first time, the public sector is calling for private money to implement their foreign policy priorities, explicitly said. So you have a different way of implementing your foreign policy priorities. And in the energy sector, you really have an opportunity. So now let's see actually what will be included into this connectivity partnership agreement and what is going to be the level of detail, because again, the devil, especially in this case, is in the level of detail, how we are going to do it, which projects, in which geographies, in which priorities, with which funding especially. We know that energy is going to be one priority. What I expect is that in these 4 areas, there's not going to be a ranking of areas. What I expect is going to be ranking within the areas. That is what would be more logic. So, you know, they all run at equal footing, but then you have, again, energy is a huge discussion. What within this energy is going to take the priority? And we will actually have to wait for a little week to see what is going to be the outcome. But for sure, that is the most promising and concrete tool that we are about to receive to finally implement on this as well.
Yes, Stefania. I mean, always you got to wait and watch and see what will come out from next week. But I also see, I think from the European Union point of view, a good portion of the recovery funds which are being put behind the you know, reviving economic growth post the pandemic are going to be invested in green projects. And I think the interesting opportunities there for, you know, creating entirely new industries, and therefore there are opportunities for collaboration, whether they can be taken. Joel, coming back to you, I mean, you know, we are talking about, you know, I think Kunal mentioned that point about that his expectation that as we look at more cross-border increase in volume, one of the mechanisms which will be used is mergers and acquisitions, right? Now, when you look at investments between the EU and India, how are the recent trends on that in your view? And has the pandemic and in the pandemic situation, Stefania was talking about that from a government contract point of view, it's actually seen a huge boost in momentum. But from a business point of view, has there been some sort of a negative impact when you look at the whole investment scenario over the last year? And what's your outlook on it?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Abhinav. In terms of trends, we see over the last couple of months, a lot of companies are still doing business from the EU to India, and they're still having those negotiations, and they are. In fact, there was a German company that set up an entire water treatment facility in India virtually. Otherwise, usually they would send 2 or 3 technicians, get to India, and then set it up. This was done completely virtually. So these are the new trends that are taking place. We also see a lot of companies in the fintech, agri-tech, high-tech, deep tech. These are the kind of companies that from the EU that are looking at India in terms of a new trend. Earlier, it was, of course, the automobile and the high precision manufacturing companies. Of course, those are the ones that still look at India. In fact, I have wanted to push back on the member of parliament of UK that talked about, looking at the Chinese list of products and looking at candles and knickknacks to be manufactured in India. I don't think India wants to position itself in manufacturing those kind of products. It doesn't want to look at it as a sweatshop, you see. We want to look at India as a high-tech, deep-tech manufacturing hub of Industry 4.0, as we call it now. And that's what I wanted to push back with, no offense to the member of parliament. In terms of COVID, yes, we did a study actually as part of the business support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues project, just to see if there was any, we did a survey to see if the appetite for India would reduce during the pandemic as well as post the pandemic. On the contrary, it was the opposite. A lot of companies, yes, they are sort of going slow right now because with the situation in India, they want to be a little, they want to play safe. But once things open up in India, in fact, in the earlier part of this year, when things were actually showing signs of improvement, a lot of EU businesses got engaged with Indian companies, sorry, and we had a lot of online discussions. We have been supporting EU businesses for so long, and we saw this suddenly a spurt of new life. Since last year, we were really trying to, piggyback and find out, cherry pick, I would say, on which were the right companies and if there was any interest. But now there's a solid interest. So I don't think the COVID situation has been an impediment in terms of EU-India business dialogue and relations. Yes, for the short term, yes, we will, of course, look at some kind of a holdback. But going forward, once things open up, we see positive signs. And I think that would make a lot of business sense for any business in Europe to just hold back for the short term when it comes to India with the current situation. And, we always say when it comes to doing business with India, you need to be there on the ground to understand the market, to get the flavor and the feel of India. Unfortunately, when it comes to a digital context, you really don't get that feeling. So I think post the pandemic, this is going to really be a boost in terms of EU-India business collaborations. Thank you.
Yeah, Joel, I mean, you talk about the flavors of India, and I think for the those of us in the UK and Europe, it's lunchtime, right? So that always reminds you that while these virtual events are great, I think one of the things you miss in the physical events is also that opportunity to, share a meal and a coffee and engage, right? So Kunal, I think coming to a different segment of things, and it might be relevant to your client set of your clients in Europe whom you're advising to on their presence in India and the strategy for India, is when you look at the SME sector, or as what it's called in India, the MSME, right? The medium, small, and micro enterprises. Now, from an India point of view, it's a key part of its policy. So in the Indian administration believes that in its push towards a $5 trillion economy, the growth of this sector is vitally important, right? Europe in many ways is already in the future there and ahead of it, right? I mean, if you just look at some statistics, let's take Germany, for instance. About half of the German economy is, by economic terms, is composed of the Mittelstand, or the small and medium sector. And 60% of employment in Germany is done by these companies. India is a little behind. I think a third of India's economy is in MSME, and in terms of employment, it's about a quarter or so of the labor force. When Indian businesses look at how Europe has built its economy, Are there any, lessons you see that you'd like to give to people who are here, who are running many of these enterprises, and or have people in the network who do so? What's the advice you give to the smaller enterprises in India?
Thanks for a very thoughtful question here, Abhinav. I think the whole, if you take a step back, the whole question of businesses from one region matching with the businesses from the other region, be it European companies vis-a-vis the Indian market or vice versa, it's a tricky one, and you gotta tread with a lot of caution because if you don't, and that's where Joel's readiness tool comes in, and I've had the pleasure of working with Joel earlier as well with some of these kind of issues. Because if you don't tread carefully, you can end up losing a lot of money and taking a lot of risk, which you clearly don't want as a company. Or if you are overly cautious and see too many risks in business endeavors in the other region, then you may lose out on opportunities. So the whole question of risk calibration, so to speak, becomes a very vital one, and expecting SMEs to do that on their own is not a realistic one. So therefore, the role of partners and consultants and advisors, public, private, and so forth, become very, very vital. And I'll expand on this point in a second, but just take a step further back, so to speak, because coming back to what Stefani also talked about with the role of the partnership between EU and India, and what we can hope will happen in the next decade. And I might reveal my word for you in a second. I think the metaphor of friendship is quite apt here. I saw a metaphor of romance between India and India and EU, but I think the metaphor of a friendship is actually more apt, because for the last decade or so, or last decades, in my view, in a very simplistic way, the partnership has been characterized by a friendship where like a solid acquaintance, right? EU has been a solid acquaintance to India, and India has been a solid acquaintance to the EU. I think, and here's my key word for what will happen, what I hope what will happen, is acceleration. I think we can really accelerate this partnership and solidify it into a much stronger one, and dare I say, make it into one of what the young people call BFF, not just acquaintances, but like BFFs. So India and EU becoming much, much closer. And how do we do that? Really good friends interact with each other on a lot of different dimensions and with a lot of different themes, and not just in silos, but in a very kind of holistic manner. And a good framework for addressing a lot of these kind of interrelated interests is, in my opinion, the Sustainable Development Goals, as has also been alluded to earlier today. So that's what I hope and what I envision can happen in this partnership, and how we can really accelerate it. In terms of how we really do that, I think it's also really important, as in all friendships, to look inwards, and from an EU perspective, looking inwards and connecting that to the SMEs really, for me, means a couple of things. The hand-holding that Joel talked about earlier as well, that EBTC provides, I think that's really vital. But I think there's a step before that that's crucial to get the ball rolling, so to speak, and that is to really embed the market increase and the market knowledge among European SME companies, really embed that in the local business organizations in each countries, and that's where there's a really important interplay between the EU level and the national member states to work together and create a database of good SME cases, and create a database so they really get that knowledge and trust of calibrating the risks properly to take the step to look into the Indian market. Otherwise, it becomes a black hole, or sorry, a black box, and simply too few companies dare take the step in the SME segment. So that's what we have to overcome.
Now that's interesting, Kunal. I like your metaphor of a friendship, not a romance, right? Romances can be intense, but they can be short. Friendships normally do endure. So
exactly,
that's very well put. I think just a quick answer from you on the topic, which Joel also mentioned, that's this thing about toys and candles and other things. There almost seems to be a different in perception here, right? In some parts, on Europe, there's so going back to your supply chain point, right? That I think one of the things every part of the world is considering, given the impact of the pandemic, is that you found that your reliance on one country or two countries for provision of essential things, it could be medicines, it could be healthcare equipment, it could be iron ore for the steel industry, whatever, was too concentrated. And everyone is thinking about how do you remove risk from the supply chain by rebalancing it. The toys and candles was one way of putting it. I think Joel's talking about a very different ambition of being, a center of excellence in advanced manufacturing or in digital and all of those fronts, right? And I think India has also stated its desire to be the pharmacy to the world. How do you see that? I mean, what do you feel are the one or two topmost opportunities in front of India when you look at all of these sectors?
I see it as not either or, but both both coexisting simultaneously. So, the knickknacks, so to speak, as well as the more high-tech, deep-tech kind of manufacturing base. I think for India's growth and employment and so forth, especially among blue-collar jobs and so forth, I think both are important. But I agree with Joel completely that India should position itself more, and is doing so, on the more high-tech side of things, and it's already happening. But that's where India also has to look more inwards, so to speak, and really boost that sector with incentives and better infrastructure and so forth, and also better communication. Because one thing we have to really realize is that India can be very overwhelming, well, as a tourist or as a company as well. And it can be almost incomprehensible for a lot of European companies to realize that there is, in fact, world-class manufacturing with all kind of FDA approvals and whatnot, world-class manufacturing taking place in India, while also seeing, small sweatshops that operate in inhumane ways almost, right? So there's a communication task as well from the Indian side to communicate that, hey, we can also do these things. We have these capabilities. And I think the supply chain point you mentioned, Abhinav, is really, it's like a burning platform right now, because you see the automobile industry and a number of other industrial sectors where there's a massive shortage of components and raw materials and so forth coming from China. And if some of these anti-dumping duties from the EU are increased or reinforced vis-a-vis China, a lot of companies will be looking to will be forced to expand their supply chain base and so forth. Yeah. And that's a real opportunity for India there.
Yeah, so, Kunal, lot of points you raise and a lot of issues to unpack there. I think I suspect you've given Sujit, Arun, and Aryan their topic for the 4th mini summit, which is on supply chain and other things, right? So it's already in. Zane, I promised to get back to you on from supply chains to flows and student flows. So next week is the India EU Summit. It's the 16th edition of this summit. 16 is also an interesting number because it's the difference in age demographics between the European Union and India. So in the EU, the median age is 43. In India, it's 27, with a difference of 16, right? While it's good for some of us, I mean, if you're on a under 40 list, you feel young in Europe and you probably feel old in India, because half the population is below the age of 27. This is a huge, half the population is 650 million people. Many of them are children and going to be students in the future. I think there is tremendous opportunity there for the education side of things. You mentioned that some of it is being captured by Latvia. I think in Germany and other places, there are increasing number of Indian students. Now, if this opportunity is to be realized further, what in your view are the main sort of obstacles or main points which the EU needs to work on to make sure it takes advantage of this coming wave of talent which needs to be educated, and there could be an opportunity here for Europe.
Thank you for the question. A rather challenging one, I must say. Because of all these developments also related to COVID and its implications. So let me tell you that in my most recent policy papers on the EU-India partnership, I have elaborated on the, so to say, online turn of higher education. So the COVID implications led to a transformation of higher education programs into hybrid or fully online encounters across the world. These measures that were taken to strengthen the safety and health of staff and students have given also impetus to new pathways for international outreach. Geographic distance becomes less and less of an issue. And moreover, the EU support for open access publishing advocated over the past years gives further boost for intensive learning opportunities and impressive repositories of academic and applied literature. So I guess that's an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Stefania, staying on education, just for a second, I'd like you to put on maybe a teacher's hat here, right? If you look at you've been looking at this bilateral relationship, you've been studying it, you've been contributing to it, you've been looking at it critically, and all those things. If as a teacher you were to give a score of where this bilateral relationship stands, India and EU, right? Whether it's A+ at the top and I guess F for flunking, what's the grade you would give it?
I think I would give it a C, which is a sufficient level, because I think at this very point, with all the expectation of the summit, we can say, yeah, you're barely meeting the sufficiency, but there's the whole B and A that you need to elaborate on. We have seen the progress. I think actually 2 or 3 years ago, I would go for a D-, because certainly there we were in a very, not in a good point. We have been progressing steadily, so that is good, but there is all of this that needs to be done. I think, I mean, the EU-India really is the one that has most potential. It has been said, it has been elaborated, but it actually is true in so many aspects. And so, and I guess what would be the driver, and what I think has been also the driver, is the waking up of the fact that the more the two actors sleep on it, the more it is beneficial for third actors, which is, so it's not because we are simply missing out on opportunities, it's because these opportunities are actually taken up by someone else to our detriment. So I guess from C, we need to move to run towards A quite fast.
Yeah, well, not bad. We're already from D- to C. I think obviously some extra tuition is required, but I suspect it also gives an idea to you, Joel. You've built that India Readiness Index. Maybe those 118 points on the strategic roadmap can actually get a score in terms of grades or whatever as we go across and see the implementation agenda. I know we're soon up on the hour. I will get to that last question. Before that, wanted to give an opportunity if someone in the audience wants to put a question to our eminent panelists. You could, I mean, leave the chat. You could just, raise your hand or unmute yourself, identify yourself, and ask a short question if you'd like to. And do tell us who you directed it to. Anyone? Would you?
Yes, I posted one question in the chat. So
okay, Ashutosh. Why don't you go ahead and say it, and then
certainly.
Yes,
actually, I asked the same question previously also with different set of panelists. So the same question I would ask from current panelists. Basically, I'm representing the infrastructure side of the business in India, and I'm representing multiple big infrastructure companies from India. So my question is like, okay, if these EU companies, if they are willing to come to India for joining some infrastructure projects, what is the requirement of that is, if they firstly they have to have the financial capacities, secondly they have to have the technical qualification of the project for winning the project in India. So what is there actually if they don't have that sort of the technical qualification, they have to collaborate with some Indian companies in that manner. And in right now what is happening in India is investing in infrastructure like anything. They are day by day they are launching some new schemes which EU companies might not be aware about. So
Ashutosh, I think that's fascinating. Only thing is, I know we're running against time, so if I could request you to be specific about what's your question exactly.
So my question is, so my question is, so if we what do you think, like should we approach to the companies directly, as lastly the panelist also told me, and what is the role the chamber which are involved in, like in this conversation also multiple chambers are involved. So what could we expect from the chambers and the representative of EU side to collaborate with such a companies and to get associated with these type of things, and making them aware about the schemes and available resources in India promoted by
great. That's fantastic. I think infrastructure is a topic we didn't talk a lot about. Joel, maybe I'll direct the question.
Yeah, can I answer
Joel,
that? Yeah, thanks.
Could I direct it to you? Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Ashutosh, hi, this is Joel. A couple of points. First of all, we have the EU-India Urban Forum, which is already a partnership between the EU and India, which have infrastructure projects. They are working in the 100 smart cities already in India. Talking about your point in terms of the lack of expertise within the EU companies, well, whatever works in the EU may not necessarily work in India. Yes. And that technology adaptation or adoption in India is something which we do as the European Business and Technology Center. So if there is a company in the infrastructure space that is doing intelligent transport systems or things like that in the infrastructure sector, we work with Indian counterparts and we make sure that that EU technology is adaptable in India, okay? And in terms of finance, most of the EU SMEs lack in finance when they come to India. Yes, we happen to have the EU-India partnership projects that are EU-funded projects to support EU businesses to work in those particular areas. For example, if you have these smart cities that India has created, those 100 smart cities, the EU has tag teamed or partnered with few of these 100 smart cities, where we ensure that EU businesses get an opportunity to work in those particular smart cities. So I hope I've answered your question. If in case you have any further questions, get in touch with me at fernandes@ebtc.eu. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So I guess we're coming towards the end of the panel, and I'll ask the question I promised I would ask, that if there is one word you feel will define what the India-EU bilateral relationship is over the next 10 years till 2030, what would that one word be? So Kunal, maybe we'll start with you first. I think you're on mute, if you could unmute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I already revealed my word, and it was acceleration. And that is a word that will be key for elevating the friendship from acquaintance to BFF. Yeah.
Very well put. Thank you. Zana?
I would say expanding. Mm-hmm. The roadmap is the best example for that potential. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you all of you want to share, please write it on the chat as well, your words. I'm sure it'll be taken note of. Joel, we'll go with you for your word.
Yeah, so my word is co-creation. I think collaboration has been used and abused. So I would like to use the word co-creation, because as of today in 2021, we have certain targets and benchmarks already created, but going over the next 10 years, we have to set new innovation. We have to create new engagement models between the EU and India. new policy targets. We are talking about certain targets by 2030, but beyond 2030, then what else, you know, in terms of climate change and all of that. So we have certain targets, and new supply chains will come into the fore with the current pandemic, opening up opportunities in different supply chains. So co-creation would be my word. Thank you.
Fabulous. That's fabulous. Stefania, last word to you. And before that, I'm just grateful that, you know, you were never my teacher while I was in the education system, because you're clearly a hard taskmaster with that C grade. But your word, Stefania.
Yeah, I actually have two words: balance shift.
We'll give
balance
you two.
Shift. And as we've said, with balance shift in terms of, we've heard supply chain, indeed it will be a game changer. Imagine a digital world where the values behind the use of technology actually have an impact, and therefore a digital world where these values are democratic values shared by both. Imagine a world where climate has been seriously tackled, and therefore you have mutual cooperation on the climate domain. Innovation is actually carried out together, and overall the whole global power balance indeed shifts from this bipolar tendency, not yet there, but bipolar tendency US-China, towards a more diffused and diffused multipolar system. So balance shift.
That's excellent. I mean, look at all four words: acceleration, expansion, co-creation, and balance shift. They're all optimistic and positive, and I think that's a great note to end this session on. We hope this can be realized over the next 10 years, and before that, the next 10 months. Thank you. My last act, just a thanks to all the panelists, to Zana, to Stefania, Kunal, and Joel. I think it's been a fantastic discussion. Of course, I'm sure many people will reach out to you and continue their specific queries and everything, but thank you for your time here today. And again, to Sujit and to Arun and to Irene, thank you for having us here. I'll hand it back to you, the floor.
Thanks a lot, Abhinav. Amazing way you kept the moment going. And thanks a lot, Stefania, Joel, Anne, and Kunal, for the answers that have come from the bottom of the heart. That's what happens when expertise and deep heart get into a discussion. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Amardeep Singh ji, and whose width of knowledge across the industries and the legal regulations have enabled him to address, again, create a very, very beautiful panel discussion with Priyanka, Pranav, Ayan, and Amrit. Thank you all. And Shitoshi, thanks for the couple of questions, and a lot happening in infrastructure sector. I am connected. You can reach out to me. Thanks for the questions. And Vijay Babu, another panelist, another list maker, also a lot in standards. So a lot of standards companies are getting in touch and working in between European Union and India. I do know in railways, Spanish companies who work in this area. So we can discuss more on that, Ashley. Thanks, questions. I'd like to thank Chandra Sika. Are you there, Chandra? Can you wave your hand? For stepping in and working behind the scenes and bringing in Kesharao Garu, our Member of Parliament. And I would thank all the three speakers, Mr. Gadde, Kai, and Mr. K. Kesharao Garu, for their beautiful points of view expressed and the guidance of what are the possibilities in the days and years to come. To Councillor Aryan, and I'd also like to thank a few other of my team members who have been working behind the scenes, including Mr. Seshadri and Joseph, and also Surya and Abhinav. I'll not forgetting two of the interns who have been working hard for this, Anupriya and Sonu, and our human resources partner, Internship, and their operation team as well. Sujit, this was a great conception, and thanks for the leadership. And thanks for all the coordination you have been doing behind the scenes. A great effort. And for Aryan, UL, thanks a lot. If I have missed any of the names, then we can. And also, if there are any questions that are unanswered, you can reach us by email or for us and tweet us. So we will be getting back to you. Thanks. I am not able to thank each and everyone by name, but there are multiple organizations and multiple initiatives, people running multiple initiatives who have come forth to make this particular third mini summit happen. I'd also like to thank a few of the speakers and who have not been able to come on board today. And the situation is like that, directly affected by COVID. But a lot of coordination did happen with them, their teams. So we thank each one of their team members also who have put a lot of effort, and that effort will not go waste. And once the speakers back, then we will have this expertise shared across as well. Sujit, I have your mission to conclude the session now.
Thanks, Arun. Thank you very much for coordinating the session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abhinav, thank you the 2019 class, 2020 class for taking your time and participating in the discussion. We'll keep you posted regarding our next summit. Hopefully, we are planning by the end of June, and we'll get back to you guys shortly on it. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening and take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.